Oops. And I forgot to start my virtual camera. Oh no, everything's working. Nothing's working.
Nothing's working.
All right. Nothing's working. I'm like a
On
total
the
mess.
plus side, I didn't have to adjust any of my sound devices. When I came on, I could hear you and you could hear me.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're live. So
No,
hello.
Yeah, it looks live now.
Except my video isn't working.
Hello, everybody. We're on
And
the
now-
correct stream now.
And now I'm Mark, and Mark, you're
Oh,
Derek.
shut up.
I'm Derik.
Oh man, I leave for 1 week and the world falls apart.
The thing is we were trying to figure out a way that we could mathematically solve for all possible permutations of anything that a player could ever do.
Let
And
me
if we
grab this lemon here because it reminds me of all of the things in games that I really like that I'm now going to complain about not liking those particular aspects of that.
All right, let's Mark's and Derek. Derek's and Mark. Can't seem to get my. All right, I have my backup camera. Let's see. Where's my backup?
Now I'm back to me.
Yes.
And Mark is back to Mark.
And Steven is darkness.
Yes, Steven is the darkness.
Hold on. See if I can get my camera to work.
Well, chat said we did 8+
There we
impersonations
go.
of each other, Derek.
Jesus
we really
Christ.
have each other down.
Oh my God. Well,
Is it?
it works now. Well, I have
Okay.
backups. I have backups to get this stuff
Okay, there we go.
working,
Okay,
so-
well, all's well that ends well.
Well, I don't know about that.
Now I'm
Anyways,
back to me. Long
Yeah.
time no see,
Ah.
Steven.
God.
Yeah, it's not like you saw each other at Origins or anything.
Yes. So
We hung out for a good solid 4 days straight.
ignore what just happened. I was so busy that I didn't do my normal check, and then sure enough, the one time you don't check things is when things break. But yes,
Yeah.
I spent many a day at Origins hanging out with Derik, way too much. But that was a lot. That was too much fun, and I think those guys enjoyed it.
No, it was a great blast. We got a lot of games, played to the table. Not as many, of course, as I would like to. I'm always like thirsting to play, 2 or 3 more games than I actually managed to get to the table. I was glad we were able to get that board game of Root in on Sunday, which was about as close. Literally, I mean, it's literally as close of a board game as you can get.
How crazy! We played a game, Mark, of Oath, where it was literally a 6-player game, and it took 5 players to beat me.
That's true.
Wait, it's 5v1.
Yes, and they barely won.
Yes. We had to union together to defeat Steven.
And people have never believed me when I say that I roll very well. People are like, that's impossible. Derek, do I roll well?
I was on the receiving end of that wrath, and yes, William Brandis makes a valid point. 5 players and a couple $100, to be honest with you.
I didn't give out $100.
No,
I gave out.
We did.
Oh, you did. Oh, right. It was 5
But there was some
players
wheeling and
hundreds of
dealing.
dollars to beat me.
Oh, I see. You needed extra money to boost
he had
the 5
he
people.
had to bribe people.
Wait, was this a game where there's at least
You're
some amount of
allowed to bribe
extra
people.
benefit for
Yes.
the one person
It's
who's
part
on
of
one
the game.
side?
It's part
Yeah.
of the game.
Well, it's part of
I'm
our
assuming
game.
it's asymmetrical and that the
Yes.
person who's by themselves is stronger than
no,
one
no.
individual person.
No. So
it's not asymmetrical.
Yeah, no. Everybody is. It can become
I
asymmetrical
just
in
kicked
Oath,
their ass.
but one player starts off as sort of the Imperial player, and then
Which
everyone
was
else
Derek.
which was me, and then everyone else is an exile, and they can
Okay.
either win by doing my job, my win condition. If they can fulfill my win condition better than me, they can win. They could become a usurper, and they could basically usurp the crown. And then alternatively, there's a deck of cards that you acquire throughout the course of the game, and some of those cards give you individually a new win condition. And if you can go and fulfill that win condition, you'll win. Steven had one of these, and so
Turn
he kind
3.
of like everybody was focused on, the stuff over here, and Steven was kind of quietly building up this resource over here, which no one cared about. But then he revealed that he had this vow that made him care about that, and if he started his turn, he would win the game. So we all banded together and just player after player after player attacked him. And it was just like Steven's dice were so hot that even though everybody turned against him, and by the way, the other players turned against him because, yes, we kind of bribed them with saying we'd pick up their dinner. And then finally, after 5 players, it took before he got taken down. And the game could, by the way, that wasn't a victory for us. The game just got to continue.
Did he eventually win?
No.
I figured he wouldn't at that point because he spent so much on that resource and got attacked.
Close again.
It came up again. Yes, there was like a weird fluke where you had enough, but then eventually
I had a backup oath, and then that one almost came to fruition.
not to get too much into the weeds on it, but this particular game was decided by which player had the most basically magic items, or they're called relics in the game. And Steven acquired an artifact that let him make his own magic items.
Every turn. Every turn.
So he could just churn out, which in this case, whoever has the most is the winning player.
Right.
And so he could literally just mass produce these things.
That sounds like the best possible thing to have.
Yes.
The win condition is having the most magic items.
It was absolutely insane. And so everyone was like, how do we stop this guy? How do we beat this guy? And it was really quite a
so
challenge.
the true final boss wasn't even the evil empire. It was just Steven.
No. But the best part is I held up in the mountain fortress, and Derik attacked me with like 25 guys.
Like the entire might of the Imperial
army of the entire, like every piece of wood and meeple there was in the game, and he still lost.
The entire empire sent its army, and these random rebels in the mountains just rolled so high.
Do you know how many I had? I had 3 meeples defending.
Yeah, he only had 3, but the way defense works in this game is the defense players is a little kind of random and chancy. They roll these dice that have the number of
they double
shields.
It doubles.
But there's double on some of the 6-sided sides. So Steven rolled 5 or 6 shields,
happened.
But then he rolled a double and a double and a double.
So we all looked.
It was insane.
He rolls as the defender goes first, and everyone looks at it. Derek's like counting up. He's like, I got like 25 guys. Go. And I roll, and every single die is like a shield or double shield or a double. And everyone went, oh, and you knew it was bad.
I've seen that kind of roll before. That usually means you just lost real bad. So, any case,
anyway,
that was just one game.
That was one game.
We had a bunch of games. So it was a lot of fun.
And then what else? And then we played Root, and it literally you need 30 points to win, and it was 29 to 29 to basically 30. It was as close as you can get.
That sounds like as close as it possibly could be.
Steven got to 29 on his turn, then Bob got to 29 on his turn, and then I won. 30. Yeah. So it was
now here's the important question: were you third player? Or were you first player and they all finished their turns at 29, then you got a turn on top of them to get to 30? Because I'm going to give you less credit if you were first player, because you basically only won because of being first player at that point.
I think Bob was
the first player. I was the last player.
You were the last
player.
So
that means that
because we used
Steven actually did the best.
That's correct.
In ways, because he had one fewer turn than both of you guys, and he obviously would have gotten at least 1 point.
And I messed up the rule, so I missed out drawing 3 extra cards, which would have probably helped. But
I kind of like it in games that are like that, where if there's a victory point threshold where it's like 30 is a win. Then what I like games that do this, and I sometimes house rule games that don't, where
you finish up the turn.
Yeah, once you get someone above 30, everybody else gets another turn until everyone's had the same amount of turns, and then who had the highest wins.
Yeah, I've seen.
I like that because it seems less unfair to someone like Steven in that situation, who clearly. I mean, he still might not have been able to get more points than however many you scored when you crossed 30. But he probably would.
It was very easy. I would have easily gotten another.
Anyways, it was another great example. And both those games, Oath and Root, are by Leader Games, and very cool game manufacturers. They actually just did a Kickstarter early this year. It's like I can't remember. It's a space game. But I kickstarted that to the full extent that I could. I've just really enjoyed the games that they've been making. So it was fun to get a bunch of board games out to get played. We also played a bunch in the hall. It was a blast.
It was a cute little con. I never went to Origins, but I saw it had like 15,000 people or something, that
sounds about right.
Which is like 9% of Gen Con, 8%. It's actually pretty small in comparison, but it was fine. It was fun. It was. I was kind of pissed. Everything was sold out on Sunday. I was like waiting, and then all of a sudden, literally everything I wanted to get was gone. So,
Yeah.
well, I was like, I'll wait till the last second, and I'm like, it's all gone. I waited too long. Oh well. I hate when that happens.
Oh, Wolfenstein has been using your Battle Zoo.
Yes, people are using Battlezoo, and someone asked if you buy Battlezoo via Amazon due to shipping costs to Germany, will you miss that? I don't know what that means. I think we're on Germany's Amazon. I don't know. We tried to get on everyone's Amazon, and we're actually in the process of like even updating our Amazon to make it better. I mean, you can buy it. We do ship to Germany, so you can buy it at battlezoo.com, and we'll send it out to you. And we actually have, I didn't even know I had this, but we have like shipping in the UK. We actually have like a partner there through my company, my warehouse. So
William Brandis adds, I also want to point out that Steven basically won our Fiasco game as well. So
There you go.
I don't know if
Well,
I
mean,
actually had the most. We'll talk about that because it's part of this topic. But I had the most boring kind of player in that Fiasco game, but all the best jokes came from me. Like Fifth Base, the Ass Prince, all that. All those were mine. All that stuff was mine. So,
well, then in that case, that
so
victory.
I kind of won it. I kind of won.
Yeah,
I came out on top in a full game of bottoms. That game, it was so that there's not enough X's for how blue that game was. But Derik was drunk out of his mind and passed out and slept through this game, which
I did miss that.
I will have to say, and this will come up later, of the 10,000 plus role-playing sessions I probably had in my entire life, that was probably in the top 5. That was
wow.
That game was out of control.
Yeah,
that game was.
It goes without saying that was the first time that you'd played Fiasco.
It was. It was. Well, it was just so debaucherous too. It was so. It was just
late night at the conventions. We had just come. We had just come from the Mexican restaurant. Everybody was full of margaritas.
Yeah, they were. But the thing was just the setup of high school drama, and it was just God, that was terrible. It was so. I wish if the whole thing was on video, you could charge for that thing. I tell you.
Yeah. We discussed like, would we ever do something like that on our Patreon, but have it be only exclusive and have like a viewer discretion is advised type warning because of that.
Yeah.
A lot of questions about your books. People want it to Russia. They want slim versions of your books.
Okay, so we can't send to Russia. I mean, I wish I could. You get the PDFs.
Wait,
everything.
The question about the slim version say that just the content for a single game system, so you don't have to pay for the extra bulk of the other game system. You don't get both game systems in the book. It's just one. There's 2 versions. There's a separate book that has the other game system.
Right.
So even though you can see on our site that we have logos of both of them to show that we make it for both, any individual book is only one. There's not like, if those books look enormous, that's because we put way too much content into them for our own like mental well-being. It's not because it has 2 systems.
Can confirm, because I got a physical copy of Jewel of the Indigo Isles, and this thing, we were comparing it.
You beat me to it.
Yeah, the things we were comparing it to were things like, Kingmaker, Shackled City, which are, by the way, 1 through 20 campaigns.
Yes,
and
this is not 1 through 20.
It's not.
1 through
1 through 11.
11, sort of. Like, you're not 11 for very long.
Really,
point is
1 through 10.
Right. Point is,
and you at 11, perfect for Fist of the Ruby Phoenix.
Right. But point is, it is literally as big, if not bigger, than some of these unbelievable, massive tomes. Like I own that hardback that Paizo did for Rise of the Rune Lords for like the anniversary edition.
I have it
easily thicker than that.
Yeah, it's much longer than and the anniversary edition actually expands the original Rise of the Rune Lords with some extra interstitial content.
Right, it does add some extra encounters and stuff.
You can see right here. Look at this. It's not even close.
You got both of them. Yeah, it's not even close.
It's not even close.
Yeah, no, it was
and Rune Lords is 1 to not 20, but it's
it's 1 to 20.
I thought it was like 1-2, like high, but not quite.
I will
20.
say my font is a little. I actually didn't
I ran
notice.
Rune
It's
Lords.
a
I'm pretty
little-
sure they didn't get to
It's a
20.
little bigger, but it's also easier to read because
Rune Lords, I think, gets to 17 or 18 or thereabouts.
I think Karzug is like a C. Like that final encounter is like EL25 or something. It's like pretty dang.
But this
tough.
is our font's definitely a little bigger in this book, but I kind of did it on purpose. I actually got when the book came out, I actually got complaints about the font, and I changed it. I actually changed the font between like the Battles of Bestiary 1 and 2, and then it's been the same font ever since. And
It looks like
a little
Spires
bigger.
of Dinshalas
Whoops.
starts at level 14.
Oh,
So I'm pretty sure it doesn't end at
Big
level
book.
20.
there it is.
And
People didn't
I've run
believe
it,
me.
but wait a minute. There's another thing here that says a different level for it. So maybe it was different between the
and
combined
the
edition
printed
and
versus the anniversary edition. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
So-
very interesting.
So this actually leads into what I was going to discuss. So here's my thought is that, and let me lay this out because I have a group and we have played pretty much every week for 20 years, maybe 25. We play Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, and I would like to try something else. But
You should.
wait. Let me finish. But they don't want to, and that's the issue.
Aw.
So what I have done in the past is I have tried other games at gaming conventions, and I've had bad experiences to terrible. Like last year,
I was not expecting that. You're like, I've had bad experiences to terrible. I was like, that was not
yeah. You're like, oh, bad experiences are good. No, they're all bad. They're bad.
That's
and they're,
awful,
they're
Steven.
really bad.
Usually
No,
when-
I've had very bad experiences. Like last year,
That's so unfortunate.
I played Blood on the Clock Tower, which I bought and I was very excited to play. And that's, social deduction game. And one of the people was, I call them role-playing bullies. Like, you have those people that are like, oh, I played this like 500 times and I know everything about it. And this is my favorite game and blah, blah, blah. And this guy would not shut up. And I'm like, dude, I haven't. Can I just play this? You don't have to be Mr. Meta Know-It-All. And then sure enough, he would not shut up and it was becoming like, oh, I know this and I know that. He knew like every interaction. So he knew who was fake and who was lying, who was not. I'm like, oh my God, shut up. I'm trying to enjoy this game. And he basically became in a room of like 20 people, like the center of attention.
Yeah.
I have a second group. I have a third group. I have multiple groups. I actually have 4 groups, but they just don't like to play those types of games.
Well,
So-
the first thing I want to say though is
Yeah.
to the first point. I mean, to be fair, that was like one anecdote. I'm not saying that you haven't had
I have
other
many
bad
more.
experiences.
I have many more.
But like a great example of that, and this is both, look, these are my people, all right? But like when we were playing Oath that first day, it was us, it was me, Knights of Last Call, some of our patrons, and Steven, who is also a patron. So it was us and a bunch of patrons playing this Oath game. And a random con goer kind of started watching our game, which is fine, and started offering advice and talking about the components and are you sure you're doing the rules right and yada 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 yada. And not only did I not care if we were doing the rules right or not, but it was also just sort of like, leave us alone, right? Gamers are typically pretty passionate people, and they tend to be a little bit quirky or a little bit weird at times. And especially when it's a game that you're really passionate about, it's an opportunity for them to really, show off. It can sometimes be a little cringy when you're at a con with a bunch of strangers and you have somebody who's behaving the way that you're describing, where they're just trying to, really, they're so proud of themselves because this is like their moment, to shine. And they get excited, I mean, I do agree that kind of comes with the territory. I don't know that it makes it a horrible experience.
Well, let me keep going. So anyhow,
okay.
My point being is that I have tried other games, and so I was actually hesitant when you wanted to play Avatar. So we played 2 games. We played Avatar and we played Fiasco, and you weren't even at Fiasco.
I was not.
But the big difference was with Avatar, everyone was friendly. Everyone was on the same page. Everyone was there to have a good time and was supportive. This is the most important part. Everyone was supportive of each other, and it was just fun. And that is like, that's the world of difference. And I've had this happen to me. I've had this happen even when I GM at like Society. Sometimes you get bad players, but that you can usually push through because if I'm the GM, I can set the tone of the table. But I'm never a player. I'm very rarely a player. So when I'm a player, it's hard for me if I'm not having a good time to sort of set the tone or push people.
In fact, sometimes it's disruptive if the players are setting the tone, even if they're trying to help. But I've run into that before because like my play style is I'm usually trying to help the GM achieve what they're trying to do. But I need to be careful.
That's the best kind of player, though.
What?
I mean, that's definitely the best kind of player, right?
Like, you say that, but it can actually cause me to have to be careful and to step back if I run into very obstructive or sort of like players that I personally grate against who are always trying to not do what the GM wants, because I don't want to be causing a problem for those players, especially if there's several of them where I try to bring things on track, but they really want to do whatever their digression is. So it sounds like I'm just saying, oh, well, my play style is I'm just the angelic player that everyone likes, but it actually can cause problems for the group if I'm not careful, if the rest of the group are being like kind of more disruptive or like, I don't want to say obnoxious because that's putting too much of a a tint of negativity on it, but like kind of just doing their own thing. Like in that Fiasco game that Steven really liked, it sounds like it went off the walls with like wild things that may not have been like directly towards the initial tilt for the I don't know if it was, maybe it was, but if I was on there trying to like always doing my role play going back towards the tilt, it may have actually been disruptive to the emergent play.
It would have been impossible for that game. But that game was impossible.
So I'm trying to show that like even you can have playstyle mismatches where nobody is a bad player or a good player, and that's one of the reasons why cons are tough. And I feel really bad for you, Steven, that you've had bad and worse experiences. My experience at cons is the worst role-playing experiences of my entire life are all at conventions by far.
Yeah, me too,
but
by far.
Some very, very good ones are also at conventions. So they vary between great extremes because I get exposed to people I never would have met otherwise, some of whom are amazing and some of whom are, oh my gosh, I never want to play with them again.
My point is I've had very good experiences when either the majority of the players are my friends and we're playing together, or if I'm the GM. And by the way, Starfinder's in there too. I forgot about Starfinder, but Starfinder's just Pathfinder in space, so it's basically the same. My point being is I had two experiences. We played Avatar, and it was really nice to see another game system played with people who were really into it and trying to get the most out of it. And then with Fiasco, and I forgot what it was like to have that because I haven't done it in so long. It's probably since I was a kid when we were playing every single game known to mankind, and I was playing a different role-playing game like every week, it seemed. And it was like, wow, it opened up my brain to think in different ways.
Ooh.
Finally, and it was nice. Like, that I get that when I play board games, but I don't always get that when I play role-playing games. But just the fact that Fiasco it's 99% talking. It's actually not 99% talking. It's 100% talking. And there's no rolls. There's the
tilt and the aftermath. And those are the only two mechanical things really in the game.
And then even for the Avatar game, we had very, very few rolls. But that one roll I did, the 12, shortchanged things.
Right. It's sort of
it was fun.
It's like kind of like a quality over quantity approach, right? Where you don't roll that often. Now, to be clear, in PBTA you can get away with that because every roll could potentially change the outcome of your character's arc, of what's going on in the scene, of what's even going on for the entire session. Right? You can't, if you're making a lot of rolls, you can't have every roll be the super dramatic, most important moment of all time, right? And so in PBTA, you have to make sure that those rolls are huge because, you know, the outcome of, well, I only made 3 rolls this session, but, you know, basically they are the equivalent to just like an attack roll or a skill check. That's probably going to be very, very disappointing because you're going to say like, I didn't really feel like I did anything. I think that's what it really comes down to. It's not about skill checks. It's not about number of skill checks. I think this is true even, by the way, in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Well, D20 in general. It's a minor complaint that I do have about the game.
So anyhow, my point is...
It's endemic to it. Well, I was just going to say is that people want to feel like they're doing something, right? They want to feel like they're having an impact on the combat, on the story, on the game, on the characters. That's all people really want to walk away from in any game situation. And I think when you have a bad time, in my experience at role-playing games, it's because you feel like I don't feel like I'm doing anything here, or I feel like we're working against each other. And it's in a not a fun, productive way.
I think that's one way that you can run into bad games, but unfortunately, it's like, you know, every unhappy gaming table is unhappy in a different way, while all happy gaming tables share some qualities.
So anyhow,
to paraphrase Anna Karenina.
So the point is that, you know, and I've seen this before in real life. It's like, you know, it's always good to get out of your comfort zone. And that was probably the best thing that's happened to me in a long time, was actually trying it. And again, I was hesitant just because I've had such bad experiences for, I don't know, 20 plus years of playing games. And
if
even
you play with people you know, or at least in this case, peripherally knew the other Knights people, it really helps.
But I only met them all like the day before. And only half
you peripherally know them though, because they come on. Yes. Some of them are on our chats and talking to us.
Oh, yeah, like, some are in the chats.
They at least have a bunch of them I've seen occasionally on here and chatting and have watched us. And so they know your personality at the very least.
Right.
It's different than when it's just total randos.
True.
Now, to be fair, there were a number of patrons there, you know, and obviously you know me the best, Stephen, and I was not there for the Fiasco game. Yeah. And so, you know, yes, but I think Mark is right. I mean, there was a little bit of an in, right? A little bit of a vetting, you know, to a certain extent. Like everybody kind of understands, like, okay, we're all on that same kind of, you know, kind of general wavelength. But the other thing is, and I have to assume that, you know, this was well set in advance before the game even started by like Smith and Alyssa, who were co-running the game a little bit. Not that there's a GM, and certainly when I play, you know, if I run a game, I had never run a game for Steven before. I had never run a game for all of my patrons who were there. I set expectations like crazy. You know, that to me is the surest road to playing a new game, even with your home group, and having a bad experience is when expectations misalign with what the game is going to deliver and vice versa. And I think it's so important to not only discuss the expectations of the mechanics, but to discuss the expectations of like, what are we trying to do here? Like, what is the objective? What is the goal? And you could see this in Pathfinder 2nd edition where, you know, maybe you're going into an adventure path or a game that's maybe combat oriented, has a lot of really tough fights, or as a GM you really love throwing severe and extreme encounters at your party, and someone comes in with a character who's a rogue that doesn't have max stat, has really high con and really high int, but isn't a mastermind and doesn't pick up any sort of combat feats, and you're like, that is a valid character, but it's not really meshing with what we're going to be, trying to do here.
Why is it always a rogue, Derik? I had that parlayer in my Pathfinder 1 game, and he took all of his feats as skill feats, or skill focus and like alertness.
Yeah.
And like he did not have any ability to
rogues,
contribute in combat until eventually the player of the sorcerer got so fed up that the player of the rogue was like, okay, fine, you pick my feats.
Listen, let me tell you, rogues are the easiest ones to mess up. In fact, so I'm playing a lot of these board games.
I actually agree with that.
Oh, totally. And wizards and spellcasters too, but that's almost, you could accidentally make a right one, but you could very easily break your rogue. I see it all the time. Like in the Oathsworn and some of these other like long legacy games where you play a character, they actually usually will have, say, 12 characters you can play, and they have the difficulty next to them, like in Frosthaven and stuff. Like, they'll say 1 to 5 stars. Like, if you want an easy character, play this one. Like, some of them, like in Frosthaven, there's a character that's literally 2 characters meshed into one. That's very complex, and you don't want to play that one if that's your first game, or first role-playing game, or first board game. Do not play this character. You will have a terrible time. Play one of the 1 or 2 star characters. You will not be able to figure out how to play this character well.
That was always kind of part of the I don't know, unspoken rule, I guess, of D&D back in the day, right? Like the wizard was the complex class, right? And like you shouldn't give that to a first timer. There was that kind of idea that the spellcasters in general, like, oh, it's your first time playing, just be a fighting man, or maybe be a cleric. They didn't even get spells at first level originally. So it is the case that you can screw things up. But as a point to that, we're going into the 3rd or 4th session of our Legend of the Five Rings campaign this Friday, and we have it. It's a samurai game with katanas. There hasn't been a single fight yet, but going into the campaign, this was understood. This was expected that, the game might have a lot of political intrigues and back and forth, and combat's very deadly. So we don't want to have it all the time anyways. Your character will get pretty messed up. If I hadn't set those expectations and everybody built their characters to be combat monsters, and we're going into the 3rd, 4th session and there hasn't been a fight yet, right? That's where people get pissed off and they get frustrated. And I think that's really especially true when you're playing with a new game, especially with a group of people who are used to playing D20. D20 has a lot of people go, oh, I've played a bunch of different games. But when you ask them, it's pretty much all variations of D20. And there's a lot of concepts that are pretty core and critical to D20 that carry over pretty naturally between various iterations of D20. And so I think that a lot of people go into any game and they kind of expect it to, quote, be like D&D. And not every game is. Clearly Fiasco is not, which nobody probably would be able to mistake. But a game like Avatar Legends, which is powered by the Apocalypse and it has its own little unique quirks, obviously plays very different than a D&D game would.
So
yeah, for sure. And that leads back to the question, or like I guess the command of the title of this article of this episode that then comes with a empowerment promise, which is the command is to go play something else, and that you'll become better even at playing the games you already play and love. And the reason for that is because basically you are stretching different muscles. It's like you've always been exercising particular muscles in your muscle groups. And it may have caused some of the other nearby muscles that are part of some of the movements you could have done to become imbalanced compared to that one muscle that you're using over and over again and super exercising by playing one game. And so if you can play those other games and see what's different, even just a little bit. I mean, the episode I don't think is telling you stop playing your D&D forever or stop playing it for a long time and just mostly switch to Avatar Legends or something like that. It's more of like, try something else for a one shot. Try a few sessions of different games and watch as it enriches your role playing and even some of your mechanical elements of what you do in the game. That you do come back to. And maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, no, I'm going to stick with Avatar Legends. Now that I've played it, that's the one I want to play.
Right.
But even assuming, which is probably true for most people, that you go off and then you do come back to your favorite game, you'll come back and you'll be more skilled and you'll have more different like skills and abilities, real life skills and abilities that you can throw into your games that will make both playing and GMing sort of more powerful. It's like leveling up, getting XP by trying something that's a little more challenging. If you're like, well, it's a little harder. I have to learn this game.
Yeah.
It's a little scary. Doing the comfortable game that I know how to play is kind of easier. It's true, but you can't get XP if you only face trivial encounters.
Right. You need to sometimes have that severe,
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. What game would be a severe encounter for D&D players, Derik?
Right. Like I would think that, like Fate.
Fate is a severe encounter. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Fate is severe.
Fate is one of the few games that I have run. I think I mentioned this in the last thing that was about people who only play certain systems for a particular group, and had that group just fail to pick it up. I've run games that are simpler than Fate and more complex than Fate and very different than D&D, but Fate was one where, as I mentioned last time we did a similar topic, one of the groups I ran it for was fantastic, but the other group, they would just all just kind of create and tag aspects onto one person who had the highest relevant role to whatever the situation was. And then that person would just be, all right, +2, +2, +2, +2, +2, legendary +8.
Yeah.
You can't absorb any of that.
Right.
So it's too much, even if you took all the consequences.
Right. Okay,
well, we're done.
Yeah, you're taking.
So that's what they would do every time, and people in chat last time were like, "Well, you should have the enemies also do that." It created. I was like, "Chat people." I also did do that, and that just made it take longer because then that just kept happening until some people failed.
And I would also say to that
it was
point,
like group. It's not Fate as a system that is the problem,
right? And I was gonna say, like at that point, right? Like again, it goes both ways, right? Like if that's how you want to play a game, then I'm not saying that like Pathfinder or D&D is adversarial, but the game is kind of structured in a way where it's like, okay, I've got these bad guys and I assume that you're going to be wanting to fight these bad guys. And so the game mechanics and the rules and the math are all sort of designed to support that. And we understand that people are going to try their hardest to be badasses and really good at combat. So the game has certain safeguards in place to make sure that there isn't some super degenerate strategy that just gets completely out of control. Fate doesn't necessarily have those safeguards because it's not worried about that style of play. But if that's where your group keeps going, then
including out of combat, by the way. It's just any time I would throw a challenge at them, the way they would solve it, and if there were no adversaries, I'm not creating tons of things to cancel it. If it's like, oh well, there's a tree blocking you in the road, and so everybody would be like, okay, well, I understand about like natural things, so I want to create an aspect that the person who's really strong can tag, where I find the weak points in the tree based on that, and then everybody will do that. They all create an aspect. The highest person tags it, does the task, and blows away any possible number that makes any sense for me to have used as the target number. That was just that group. And the other group I played with didn't do that and just had so much fun with Fate. So there are some, I think you're right that is a severe encounter, because that's the only one I've ever experienced where I had a group of experienced role players that I felt like failed to get the system.
Yeah, I would say that Steven's fiasco experience was probably more like an extreme encounter.
Yeah, that's right.
That was past.
It's an extreme encounter because the cleric didn't come, who was going to be able to smooth things over.
That's right.
Cleric of Cain was drunk and missed the session.
Extreme plus and then
extreme plus. And we have a couple of super chats. Whipplestein, who's from the Night's Last Call Patreon, says real life sense motive checks are rough, but real life initiative rolls are probably worse. That is true. I will say this: I've gone to a lot of cons, probably like pretty much straight for the last 20 years. I've never seen a fight break out. So I have seen,
you almost saw a fight break out at our Oath game.
What, were you going to fight that guy?
Oh my God, I was getting pretty angry.
You were getting pretty annoyed. The New Yorker was coming out, and then Rick Sherman says $5 says KOLC shout out. Rick S is our big. He's our kind of our Traveler aficionado. A lot of us have been getting really into Traveler. Speaking of new games and new trying out, we've all kind of ended up investing several $100s in Traveler, because again, it's not the type of game that I would normally be interested in, but it's different, and Mark, kind of hint on that. Like we got a chance to sit down and play for it. It was a lot of number crunching, a lot of numerical things. You got to figure out your mortgage interest rate on your spaceship. But that was fun. It was a different part of my brain. And I don't know that I would want to do that there are a lot of games I look at and I go, I'm having a lot of fun with this. But I've been playing, D20 based fantasy adventure games for 30 years. I'm probably going to play them until I stop playing these games. I know that. There are some games I play where I go, I'm having fun with this. But this is not going to be a game that I'm going to continue to play for the rest of my life. And that's okay too.
And Traveler, they're the big accomplishment of that Traveler game. The 3-hour session, they said, was they built their character, they built a spaceship, and then they got a really good rate on the payments for the spaceship. That was the game.
and got someone to pay off their medical debt.
Oh, that's right. Someone to pay off. They're so excited. That's 3 hours. Like,
Yep. And again, it all comes down to managing expectations and what people are, interested in and all that other stuff. And I think Mark kind of hint on this. A lot of times I know this is very popular in our Knights of Less called Patreon. A lot of people play these games just to steal or poach mechanics to put into their Pathfinder game.
oh yeah, of course.
Like there's somebody playing, I can't remember what they call it. I think they call it Pathfinders in the Dark or something like that. It's basically like Pathfinder 2nd edition, but with some elements from Blades in the Dark that they kind of cribbed in, with things like the position and effect and clocks. And then there's even some games out there that are, like the Lancer game, or they're making a new game called Icon. And they basically are just like, yeah, we're just sticking like 4th edition tactical combat with like Powered by the Apocalypse for like non-combat resolution, and we're just sticking them together. And like that's their game. They're just taking two kind of wildly different mechanics and just sort of sticking them together and saying, we're going to use this for combat encounters, we're going to use this for non-combat encounters. And that felt, I mean, I guess it's a real game and people do buy it and play it, but it felt like something that like a home brewer would, kind of do and make.
So, by the way, yes, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us questions. Do subscribe and like. Oh, we forgot our standard likes. Like, see, if we get 50 likes, we got to make Derik do something silly. Derik, you got a lemon? You got a lime?
Lemons. No, I've got my Invisalign in now.
All right, your Invisalign. Well, get something. We'll make him eat something.
All right, we have a couple more. Super
I know
chats.
we have a couple more.
Creative Burst says, one thing that I think can be brought from Avatar is that the story is open-ended. There is an adventure about an adventure about an investigation and kidnapping, and who is the kidnapper is and who the kidnapper is whoever the players are interested in. I think you do have to be a little careful with that sometimes. If it can feel a little bit too open-ended, it can make your choices not feel as important, right? Like no matter which way we go, we're going to be choosing the right way because of that mechanic. But I will say, Creative Burst, and this is my own personal failing as a game master for Pathfinder. Avatar's mechanics are very simple. Like an NPC has, I don't even roll dice for my NPC, right? They just have like a drive and some boxes of fatigue that they can take. So for me, it's really easy to be like, yeah, let's go over here. Let's do this. Let's go there. Oh, you want to go down to the docks? Let's go down to the docks. But when I play Pathfinder, I appreciate a well-constructed encounter that has been carefully prepared. And maybe there's a cool map or location where that fight will occur. There might be terrain elements that matter for a game where, we have feats like fleet. So, or abilities to move through difficult terrain or whatever, what have you. And I personally find that, like, if you try to play Pathfinder 2nd edition, super open-ended, low prep, no prep, I sometimes feel like the quality of your Pathfinder 2 game can suffer. People might not realize that it's suffering, but I think that they can suffer just because I think it's a game that's pretty hard to just whip out of your back pocket real quickly and throw together an encounter that is going to, really sing and really sort of deliver. I mean, there might be some people who go, I don't really care. Like, I'll just throw a couple random monsters together and put them onto a blank Chessex grid and we'll be good to go. That's a fun fight for me, which is fine. But I think that you're leaving some money on the table when you do that.
So, we had one more really quick, which was Brass Dragon, I think, Pathfinder Society, and is locking up uncommon ancestries behind. ACB turns off a lot of people from Pathfinder 2nd. Tiefling mains in the D&D would hate Pathfinder Society. Not everyone wants to play human fighters and elf rangers. But that's the choice of Pathfinder Society, is that,
Pathfinder Society doesn't allow uncommon ancestries?
It does.
It does.
It costs achievement points, which you get so many to start with that you can freely buy an uncommon ancestry. And by the time you play them level them up a few times, you can get another one.
Yeah. I mean, you can get them, but the point is like they have to balance.
This is just this one person has posted in like 9 of our videos this very unrelated comment about Pathfinder Society, which we don't decide anything about here at Roll for Combat. And
we have nothing
this
to
is
say.
like time number 10 at this point.
Okay, but still,
we get it.
I know, but I'll answer it is that we have nothing to do with that, and I get it because that's just the way it is, and they can do whatever they want. You know, they could get rid of it if they wanted to. So Hope Finder, with Jason Bowman, is a PF2E hack for modern zombie apocalypse game. A non-Uber powered PC game, unlike Pathfinder. So I've actually never even heard of Hope Finder.
Wait, you've never heard of Hope Finder?
Actually, I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it. Let me rephrase that. I've heard of it, but I know little to nothing about it. So
I actually felt bad for Jason. He was, I don't know, it was a late night or something like that. He was tweeting, and he had made a complaint about like how if he self-published this adventure, how there was like almost no chance that it would sell enough copies for him to make back his money.
I saw that on Twitter.
And then he did do it. He released it, and then he very like in almost a very kind of not a very passive aggressive way, but kind of a passive aggressive way. It was like, look at these sales, and it was like he sold a couple hundred, copies. Like that was it. And I did feel kind of bad for him.
Yeah, well, you know what? I have access.
I mean, you're the arguably
I know, but you know what?
Guy behind that system now, right? Your name is the name that's on, the cover of all those books. I know. And you go and make your own adventure, or you go and make your own system. You would think that the people would just.
That's not how it works. I know, but that's not how it works.
Like I'm like one of those. Like for example, if John Harper makes a game, I'm buying it. I don't even care what it is. I'm buying it because it's going to be good. Right. And you talk about these other ways and getting out of D&D and stuff like that. Like there are game designers that I personally love and know. I wonder how many people in the D&D space, or maybe even in the Pathfinder 2 space, have like game designers that they specifically like and say, oh, I like their style and their design. Mm-hmm. Especially some of these D&D books. I mean, they have 27 authors. So you're like, I don't even know who wrote or did what. And I like being able to sort of look at a game and say they have a certain style and they have a certain way of approaching game design and getting into that. So that's always been fun for me.
So Brass Dragon does say, following up on previous super chat, I don't know if non-Pathfinder Society games exist, but noobs are often directed to Pathfinder Society, and not enough GMs are running non-Pathfinder, having spent ACP to play Roxy or Thiefling.
I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised at that. I mean, a big part of Pathfinder, I feel like, is like, all are welcome here, and express yourself through your character.
Well, but you know what? But it's not
like in my Northern Reaches game, which is kind of like Knights of the Last Call's version of Pathfinder Society. I ban all those uncommon ancestry because I don't like them.
But my point is that if you go to Gen Con and like you search, there's I think twice as many D&D games as Pathfinder, by the way, and they play. Now, look, I don't know what cons you're going to, but you can find anything at these bigger cons. I mean, you might not get into them, but there are games, I guarantee, if there's a game you've never heard of, it's being run there. They run everything at Gen Con. They run a lot of games. And if you don't like it, then you run it. I mean, that's the thing. Anyone can run anything at these cons. I haven't done it in a while, but there used to be a con around here, and when I was working with Goodman Games, and he was starting up DCC, I would run DCC games for him at local cons here, and I was the only person doing it, and I would, sign up and run the game. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, if you're looking for stuff, you are limited to what's there, but if you want to try something, then run it. I mean, seriously, it's very easy to sign up and run something at these conventions, trust me. And it might not be ideal, but it's better than nothing. It's definitely, better than absolutely nothing.
Yeah. 25 North says he will buy anything that Jared Sorensen makes. Great choice.
Yeah, by the way,
I think that it's very interesting that Pathfinder and D&D players throughout the editions of Pathfinder and D&D, a high percentage, a much higher percentage of them do not have a favorite designer or know the name of a designer at all.
No,
they know the brand's name.
Yeah,
it's much more likely. and that's just been true. But it's not that weird that indie RPG fans know the designer more often, because by the point where you are tuned in enough that you even know what the indie RPG is, you probably are also in the same subset who knew the names of designers, including for D&D and Pathfinder.
True.
As well.
That's probably true. Yeah. I mean, but it is interesting to me that, I don't know. I guess it comes down to like I treat role-playing games the same way I treat board games, right? When I'm looking for, like, I don't sit down to play a game like Root or Oath the same way I would sit down to play a game like, Seven Wonders or Carcassonne or Telestrations or Code Names, right? Those are all very different games that have different mechanics and are trying to achieve different results. Yes, we all are sitting around a table playing a game, but other than that, right? But I guess what it comes down to is when it comes to the board game hobby, I don't want the exact same experience every single time I sit down to play a board game. And I guess maybe there's a difference. Maybe there are people who literally want the exact same RPG experience every time they sit down to play an RPG game. Like if they could have the same session basically happen over and over and over and over and over and over again, that they would be fine with that. And that is very alien to me. That's very foreign to me.
Not really. I mean, that's actually, so in video games terms, we call that the loop. I forgot the exact term, but we call that the loop. The like what are you doing continuously? And the loop is what drives
the grind.
No, not grind. Like the loop of like, okay, like the loop of World of Warcraft is you go on adventures, you fight monsters, you get gear, so you can fight stronger monsters and go on different. Like that's the loop.
I mean, to be fair, you just described D&D and Pathfinder as well.
Right. But that's the loop. So the loop is you're constantly fighting, and like Monster Hunter and all these games, it's like you're constantly trying to level up your character so you can get better loot, so you can fight stronger monsters, and that's the loop. That's the play loop. But like a Civilization game has a very different play loop, the game loop or play loop. The game loop for Civilization is very different than the play loop for a role-playing game. You know, like.
But to your point, fight the monsters, beat the challenges, reach the milestones, get the experience, level up, so that you can fight the same monsters that are now tougher monsters, and then do that again and again until either the campaign ends or everybody gets bored or you TPK.
But the other thing is, keep in mind,
I would not want every single look. Sometimes I love that. I love sitting down to play a D&D campaign or a Pathfinder campaign, and it's like level 1, here we go, right? But I wouldn't want to do that every single time I sit down to play a new campaign. That would be horrible.
Are you talking about board games now?
No, I'm just talking about like sitting down to play a role-playing game where if whether it's D&D or Pathfinder, where it's like the same gameplay loop, which you just described, which is go on an adventure, get experience and treasure so that you can level up, so that you can fight tougher foes that'll give you better treasure, and then level up so that you get even better treasure until the game ends. That's sort of, I mean, we're being kind of dismissive, but that's kind of the core gameplay loop experience of D&D and Pathfinder and games like that.
A lot of TTRPGs, even ones that actually don't play very similarly to Pathfinder or D&D, still have something kind of similar to that. Even if the word loot gets changed to the word like perk, or something like that.
Reward cycles are really, really important, but I'm specifically talking into like the motivation and for how that operates, right? Like the idea is that you're going to get stronger and stronger and fight tougher and tougher things. And for a lot of people, that's really satisfying. But what's interesting about that is, obviously, it's very interesting to me. This is something I notice a lot of times, a big difference between me and other role players. A lot of people play Pathfinder or play D&D, and they will have a lot of in-character interaction. And we talked about that loop, but it's almost like for a lot of these groups, it's like they push pause on the game mechanics. They push pause on the actual structure of the game, right? There's no D20 rolls being made. There's no diplomacy checks. There's no attack rolls. It's like they play Pathfinder 2nd edition the way that God and Mark intended. And then they go, okay, well, now we want to sit in the tavern and talk in character. So like pause the game and we're going to go do this other activity. It's almost like a fiasco game, Steven, like in the middle of your Pathfinder 2nd edition game.
Yeah.
Right. And then when everybody gets kind of bored with that, or, it's like you push play and you go back into playing
Correct.
Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Well, you know who was the king of that? You see, by the way, and I wanted to mention that, I've thought to myself, because they were making fun of me, Mark, at Origins, that I have played so few other TTRPGs, and yet I do roll for combat.
They
were making fun of me, but I said, A, I don't need to because I have Mark, and B, and
that's what I'm for.
No, seriously, and B, I bring other things to the table because, like, I bring, and Mark knows this because he's worked with me for over a year, I bring a lot of experience from video game methodology and script writing methodology and just authoring, and like I use different methodologies from different industries and art forms and apply them to role-playing games. And that's how I like to do it, because I just see things very differently, and but I see the correlations, and I see how, why use something that someone else is using in another TTRPG? Why don't we use something that's been tried and true? Just because, quite frankly, video games and movies and plays have been battle tested way longer. And there's a lot of things in those that work, and I know they work. Therefore, why don't we just put those into our games? And you know what? They have worked. And it had, so far, at least for us, it has shown to actually work, just the way we build things. So I forgot what I was talking about. You mentioned something and it made me think about that. Wait, what did you say right before this? You said...
I was just talking about like people pausing the game in order to discuss things.
And David Eddings. Yes. So David Eddings is famous.
Author?
The author. The Belgariad and the Malariad. Yes. Yeah. Which, by the way, great books. I haven't read them since I was a kid, but boy, I sure loved them back then. He did a cycle. And I talked about this a few weeks ago. It said his books always did the same thing. They would travel for a chapter. They would talk for a chapter. And then they would fight for a chapter. Travel, talk, fight. Travel, talk, fight. Travel, talk. Sound familiar? That's D&D for you. That's a lot of Pathfinder, and it's not a bad system. And when I'm playing my Pathfinder games, I often will think, and before the game, I will tell the players what to expect. I'll say, tonight we're going to be probably doing more talking, role playing and stuff, and so it mentally gets them in prepared.
And a lot of people might go like, oh no, how are you? I love that. Yeah. I think that's brilliant, because again, I set that expectation and have people, like I said, if you're going in tonight being like,
I'm ready to kill stuff.
I'm ready to kill stuff, and then like you go the whole night, and you're like, and that's when that player might,
they get anxious, they get upset,
and
they're not happy because they thought tonight was going to kill something.
They start ruining an encounter, right? Just because they're like, I kicked the king's goblet of wine into his face
because I want to fight. I just want to fight.
Because I want to fight. Look, dude, I just wanted to let loose.
I had a bad day. I want to fight. So I often will do that, and I'll tell them what to expect. Especially don't forget, these are also my friends, and they know how we play, and they appreciate it. They know, and then that's how they play.
One of the things that I have really learned from other games, because I grew up playing D&D, is the idea that I really view myself now as just one of the players. I have a different role than the other players, but I'm just one of the players at the table as well. Mm-hmm. And these are people I love and respect, or at least, at
least respect. Okay, maybe not even respect.
No, because
I admire them. Okay, maybe not admire. I may not know them. Okay, I don't even appreciate them. You know what? Yeah. I know them. They're friends.
They're
not friends. They're acquaintances.
For a GM, and for whether a GM is a player, because that is an argument that goes online, and they're a player, they're not a player, is that the GM is a thumb. A thumb is a finger, But
Sure.
sometimes when you talk about your fingers, you don't.
Sure.
You really mean all the fingers except for the
Derik,
thumb.
I'm
The
going to be
thumb
calling it that.
opposes
Derik,
the other
thumb.
fingers in certain ways. It's
Sure.
opposable, but because it does, it allows them all to accomplish a lot more than they would have been able to do.
Advanced
if you
tool
didn't-
use.
if you didn't have.
That's right. If you didn't have a thumb,
one
your
finger that was
sword
opposable.
would fall out of your hand, and then
Right.
you don't fight
So they're
for
not
Rome.
really against each other, even though it technically opposes it. That's
Yeah,
why
no,
the GM is a thumb.
I think that's really an interesting idea because again, yes, you obviously have a very different role, but again, we're all kind of in the same boat together. And I grew up with this idea that like the DM had this like era of mystique about them, this smoke and mirrors.
I remember that the old
Wizard of
DM
Oz
guides talked about that
Yep.
mystique. They built it up.
They built it up, and now it's like I'm much more comfortable with having like an open and honest conversation with people, even in the middle of a game session. You saw, I think, some of that, Steven, in our Avatar game that we played, which was just a one shot, where it was almost like stopping for a moment to be like, all right, so what are you really trying to get out of this scene? Let's make sure everybody is on the same page,
Right.
that everybody understands what's at stake here, or that I, as a GM, we've been kind of talking in character, but I want to make sure that there's no ambiguity here, that everyone's very clear about what is being said here.
So, by the way, I'm going to say this right now in front of God and everyone that Derik is an excellent GM. He was very good. I was very impressed. And that was a hard game. That was with 6 players or 7 players.
7, yeah. That's a
7
lot.
teaching a new system, and we had a great time.
Yeah,
was a
it
lot of
went really
fun.
well. But again, these are all nights of last call Patreon members. So
Yeah,
I like to
yeah,
think,
but
I like to
7
think,
people, it's
I like to
hard.
think they're a cut above.
I will say everyone there was an advanced player. Like everyone there they knew what they were doing. You didn't have to explain stuff to them, except for Bob. Bob seemed to have some problems, but
It's not just me.
that's
so
that's
good.
half a joke.
That's so good. I might clip that and put that on my soundboard for my streams.
Look, he just wanted to hit and kill people. He's like, what's the one that lets me fight?
Right. Which, to be fair, his playbook was the hammer.
Right.
And his playbook was about the balance between, getting things done and being more mindful and caring of others. And he had a lot of moves and abilities that are like, you just take the kind of unsubtle, direct, brutal way to deal with issues. So,
hey, Mark, you know who I got to
you
play?
can argue it was good role
Who
play.
did you get to play?
The Budgetar.
Yes. He was the budget avatar.
I was the icon.
He was the icon.
Budget avatar. So the avatar of
Just one.
Well,
Just
'cause
Earth.
The game doesn't let you, obviously, you can't play the avatar. And so the icon as a playbook is a character who was raised to be this great leader or this great somebody. And we set ours right after the events of the first TV show. And we're like, the avatar had been missing for 100 years. And so they had basically picked him. They said, hey, look, you're not the avatar, but we need somebody to fill the avatar's role.
So you're like pretending to be the avatar
Yeah.
as like
And
a
then-
phony.
As exactly. And so we called him the budget avatar or the budgetar. And so when the real avatar eventually made his reappearance, it kind of left Steven's character torn between like what is like, I have freedom now. I can go do whatever I want. This great expectation that was set on me is no longer a part of who I am. Yet at the same time, I was raised to believe that I had a certain role and a certain destiny to fulfill. And how do I strike a balance between the two of that? And what's interesting, even in the game, is at the beginning of the game, the other players were kind of teasing him. And, like in character, a little out of character, making fun of him, calling him the budget avatar, the budgetar. And by the end of it, he had done such cool and awesome shit, helped out by some really nice die rolls, that everyone was like, you've earned my respect. You're not just a budget avatar. You are a capable bender who has, a lot to offer the world. And it was kind of a cool, and again, everybody got like these really cool little arcs that they got to sort of go through. And it was really cool to see Steven's arc in particular.
Yes. It was fun.
Good work, budgetar.
Good work, budgetar.
Wait, we have a whole bunch of it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, we have
super chats.
several super chats that happened. So we have Tiger Eyes saying that they're a Patreon supporter of Eventide Hope Finder when you brought up the Jason Bowman Kickstarters, because they enjoy what's being developed, and they also kickstarted Pillars of Eternity and Dark Tower. And Lollipop Candy said, speaking of different methodologies, I'd love to see a stream with Steven, Mark, and Derik talking about different skills that are involved in being a GM. Nice. Ollie Wright said the aid action in 2E is a fate-like narrative permission mechanic hiding inside Pathfinder. At least that's how I run it. Do you?
I run it that way. In fact, if it was up to me, I would allow you to aid after the die roll.
Still can. It's your game.
I mean, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
but I mean, my aid rule is already pretty generous, right? Which is I got rid of the die roll entirely. If you take an action on your turn to prepare for aid, then on as a reaction, and I'm pretty generous about that. Like you could just say, like, I'm keeping my eyes out to see if anybody needs my help, within reason. And then I make aid automatic. If you're trained, it's +1 circumstance, expert +2, master +3, legend +4. I just skip the die roll. I like aid. I think it's really, really cool, and I think it's a shame that it's not really a viable action until like level 5.
If you allowed that to be used retroactively, that would be way too busted, though.
No, I let him.
It would be way too busted if you have a hanging +4 that just applies only whenever it turns something into a crit.
Okay,
that's just done.
Someone
especially
has to
if the enemies
they
can
can't
use
give a
it.
+4 unless they're a legend. So that's
Sure.
not,
especially
that's
if the enemies can use it. I could wipe out any group of PCs instantly if I could apply a +4 to whatever.
You tell her, Mark.
To whatever
in his
the
place.
best possible place was.
So let me ask you this.
Apply it.
That kind of a side note here, and I actually am wondering about this. I don't, because it is not for balance or unfairness. I just can't be bothered, and it's a pain in the ass to track. I never have my monsters aid in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Do you?
No.
I do, but I don't do it a lot because I tend to, unlike a lot of people I read about online where their monsters are just always killing everybody right away, like I tend to, by the time I'm at levels where my monsters would successfully aid with a high probability and get a crit and like add a lot of bonuses, my monsters tend to be at a situation where the tempo is on the PC's side and they need to do something about it right now. While they've also lost actions because of things the PCs have done where they crit bowed them and now they're immobilized until they spend an action to easily succeed at a DC 10 athletics check and remove it, and or also been slowed 1 by something and knocked prone, and it's like I've got so many things I have to do before I can even do my turn that I don't have actions left to aid very often. But when I do use aid with my monsters.
I don't aid, but I do. I shove a lot. That's actually one of the best ones in the game. People forget about it, but oh my god, it's good.
But it has multiple tech penalties, so
it's good though. I use it. So, for example, what I I try not to do it because it's a little OP. It's tripping, but in a game,
tripping is fun.
Is that Lauren messed up my bad guy, and he had 1 action when he went. He was slowed too, and I was like, fine.
See, you're in the same situation I am as a GM. You were slowed too.
Right, yeah.
You guys are better than me. When my monster gets slowed too, I just remove it from the battlefield.
No, it's slowed too. I say, good. I'm tripping Vanessa's dragon. Critical success. And she's like, come on. And I'm like, what action? That's all I got to do. And not only did you fall down, but you took damage. Ha ha. And it was so worth it. And then so I was like, see, the 1 action is going to take half your turn to fix. So don't slow me, because if you didn't slow me, I would have just attacked you instead.
Yeah, but I mean, on the grand scheme of things, if they're fighting 1 opponent and they slow 2 and they spent their action just to knock someone prone.
No, there was multiple opponents.
Okay, I'm just saying.
It was like a mook, but
sounds like probably an action economy win. But if they succeeded,
given that this is a creature that Derik you would have removed from the board entirely.
Oh, listen,
tripping Lauren is probably a big achievement.
I will remove a PL. I will remove a PL.
Okay.
I will remove a PL +2 or +3 monster from the board. If it was a PL 0 or PL -1 monster, I would definitely remove it. Slow.
You would actually just not only
okay. I'm going to tell you right now,
like a lemon, that it's gone.
Dude.
Slow 3 and slow 6 might as well say critical failure, killed. in my campaigns. I don't even bother to put him on the battlefield.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Well, that's an issue.
Maybe you should add the incapacitation trait to it, since in your game,
I think slow should have the incapacitation trait.
I mean, I also think it probably should have, even though it's not technically flavor-wise.
I mean, it is definitely incapacitating the monster.
Yeah,
and if you
definitely too much of an effect to not have,
and it's slow 1 on a success, which is like the kind of.
Actually, really, what it should probably do is like slow 2 for 1 round, slow 1 for 10 minutes or an hour or something like that, and then keep it as not incapacitation, because compared to paralyze, once you've got the incapacitation trait, paralyze is really going to wreck your house, and so slow would be very kind of unattractive compared to paralyze if it also had incapacitation.
I like that rule a lot, because the issue slow 1 for a minute isn't like horrible, but like slow 2 for a minute is just like
you're done when you're slow 2 for a minute. I keep them on the map like Steven does, but I don't expect the amount I've expected to get out of them for that at that point has reduced by like 95%.
Right. Yeah. But anyways, it is a very powerful spell. It's one of our favorite spells. Actually, we have retroactively retconned that. It used to be slow 6 used to be our highest ranked spell, but we have retconned it to just heal. Heal is now the most powerful spell in Pathfinder 2.
So
heal.
I'm gonna
just heal.
I'm gonna
because slow 2 can eat up 2 actions, or slow can eat up 1 to 2 actions of a boss type monster's turn. Heal can eat up all of them, because you basically just completely
slow could eat up 2 actions each turn for a minute.
Right, true, but most creatures aren't going to last longer than 3-4 rounds, anyways.
Sure, but heal's probably not going to eat up 3 to 4 rounds worth of 2 actions. Admittedly, they're probably not going to fail their save against slow either.
That's true, right? So you got to think of it. To be fair, it's got to think of it more like slow 1. But yeah, heal is just the healing potential of heal is just way too high, Mark.
So
it's very high, but other healing spells have heal as a benchmark. Like
I know, but I'm just saying, heal in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is equivalently like almost heal from like Pathfinder 1, or like I
mean, the cure spells in Pathfinder 1 didn't heal enough, to be fair.
They were very weak. But hit points,
healing in general is very strong in PF2.
Yes, extremely.
Like lay on hands heals for a significant percentage of heal and is a 1 action, which normally give way less than half of the benefit of a 2 action, because you can throw them on top of a heal.
And it doesn't have the concentration trait.
And it doesn't. And it also gives +2 AC if you use it on somebody else.
Yeah. No, lay on hands is great. I'm not saying it, but there's a lot of champion.
In fact, lay on hands heals for more than 1 action heal.
Isn't it 6 per
6
level?
Per 1 action heal is 4.5 per or 5.5.
Oh,
per.
1 action.
Yes, it heals for more than 1 action heal.
Yes.
If you're talking about throwing it on top of a 2 action thing, and it's a focus point, which are about to become like has dispensers
raining from the sky.
Raining from the sky.
We have already talked about it's just gonna be like attack. Raise my attack, lay on hands, attack, lay on hands. Like it's going to be so silly. But I mean, yeah. Anyways,
so real quick, and then we're gonna do a break, and I have a new video for everyone. Dragon said Fate seems fun because it's role play, your story focus. I've never played Fate, and I can play as a dragon. Unfortunately, I can't find play by post that's high fantasy allows dragon. That I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, Fate. Play by posts are gonna. The thing about Fate is it's a system that can work for any genre,
right? And
so your chance of actually finding a genre that is exactly the one you're looking for is going to be lower than if you play a Star Wars or if you play Avatar Legends. It's going to have the genre of Avatar: The Last Airbender once you found the group, because that is the only genre that it has. Or
correct.
If you play Blades in the Dark and you're like, darn, I can't find a Blades in the Dark game that has a heist genre. It's like, wait. No, because that is the only genre that it has. So it is true that Fate is so broad that once you found a Fate game, it might be like a gritty noir detective story,
right? Or
in the 1960s,
right?
And it's like, yeah, there's probably not going to be a dragon in that.
Yeah, I mean, what I would do is join the Fate Facebook group. That's actually a good way to find games like play by post, play by Discord. You can't do it on Discord, is to find the Facebook group, and that's actually I'm finding for board games it works very, very well. So I would try that. So anyhow, we're gonna take. You guys get 1 minute and 30 seconds. Go.
Hi, Barbarian here. Are you a game master looking for an amazing game world rich in lore and strange new creatures to run your D&D or Pathfinder 2 game in? Well, look no further than the world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles. The world of Battlezoo, Indigo Isles contains everything you need to set sail for adventure. Except maybe a boat. You're probably gonna have to buy your own boat. But the book itself contains a detailed overview of key locations on the Indigo Isles, dozens of story hooks and NPCs, and details on the ancient spiritual religion known as the Eld. Wow, that sounds spooky. Don't forget to take your weapons with you. You'll also get 15 new dragons as monsters, featuring the entire family of wild dragons from the Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragons book to help you murderize your players' precious characters. And you'll get gobs of new magic items to make them feel like they might have a chance. But they won't, will they? What's more, there are tons of new character options, 10 new ancestries, 10, and new archetypes and subclasses and heritages, and seven familiars native to the Indigo Isles. Remember, the world of Battlezoo Indigo Isles comes in 2 different versions, one for D&D 5e and another for Pathfinder 2. Oh yeah, and they are releasing the PDF right after the Kickstarter ends. If you'd like a new fantastical world to amaze your players with, click that link right down below to follow the Kickstarter and get notified when it goes live.
Books.
Yeah.
He's got Dungeon World.
He's got a lot of good books back there. I actually recognize almost all of them.
He's got pretty much all Bob Salvatore's books. I see that's Cleric's Quintet in the upper left-hand corner.
That book.
So the left-hand side of his setup is just fiction.
He also had I think a Magician's Apprentice in there and a few other things. So, but yeah, so if you guys are interested, July 18th, World of Battlezoo Indigo Isles. I'm laying it out. It's up to over 200 pages. Probably going to be like 240, 250 pages. It's going to be a big freaking book.
It's a lot. It's cool. It's hopefully the first of several that are in the World of Battlezoo line.
Which I just got.
It'll depend on all of you. Yeah. Because Steven and I hope that there's a lot of interest in the World of Battlezoo setting and the many mechanical options that we put in to express that setting. But I'm not really sure. Like, campaign settings are definitely a thing that is not going to ever be as popular as playing a dragon, because playing a dragon is just something that so many people want to do. So I'm super curious.
There's 10 ancestries. And there's 15 dragons.
There are 15 monster dragons.
Dragons, not playable, but monster dragons.
15 monster dragons, and there's deities. There's tons of playable content in it. Yeah, I think that it's interesting and exciting, and I'm hoping people will like it because there's more to tell about the world of Alucard by far.
I just finished up Gold Crop, and there's some excellent things to steal in that book, in that part of the world that Grady wrote.
There's a lot of fun in the settlements and the other things. Like there's other towns than just the main 2. So especially if you're running Jewel of the Indigo Isles, I now have a Cragrak Eldamon trainer in my game who came from the town of Crest, which is built on the top of a volcano that they're keeping from exploding with a monastery of Eld worshippers. And there are many Cragraks there. So there's lots of other interesting things that you can find in there that would fit well with, especially with Jewel of the Indigo Isles games.
So, I mean, this has nothing to do with it, but I will answer it just because he spent the money, is that Grass Dragonist, that he was lucky enough to find an on-Pathfinder Society game that works for me to playtest for Indigo Isles, where I was going to play a cocktail, bartender-themed Indigo Dragon Alchemist, but then I'm not in it. What happened? I have nothing to do with the Pathfinder or those games. There are play-by-post games that's actually run by... Who runs our play-by-post channel? That is by Brigand42. He's the VC. So I would ask him if you can, because he runs all. Because there's hundreds.
So there was a play test that was going on that you don't control.
That was for over a year ago. I don't know what a play test is, but it would just be like the game. It's been out for a long time. So if that was over a year ago, I definitely don't know what happened. If it was more recent,
if we're talking about playtest for Jewel of Indigo Isles, I have the books. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that was for, but the point is that we have hundreds of games on the Discord, on the Roll for Combat Discord. I don't run the games anymore, and we have a VC for that. So we actually have two. I'm
kind of an idiot here. What is? I assume it doesn't mean venture capitalist.
It is a venture captain. So yes,
venture captain. Got it.
But anyhow, I would see what happened there. And also, in general, it's individual games. I have nothing to talk, I have nothing to. And I don't really, I will try to contact Nim, but this is probably not the best place to talk about this because I don't really know what's going on with this game. But back to the main topic. So,
I mean, I respect the hustle.
Yeah, I respect the hustle, but it was yeah, I don't have anything to do with the hundreds and hundreds of games that are being played on the Discord at all.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, Knights of Last Call has about 350 patrons, and we have about between Northern Reaches and then non-Pathfinder 2 community games. We have sometimes 4 to 5 games that are happening on our Discord every day. Especially because, like I said, over 75% of our members are game masters. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what's going on with any of those. And I'm 300 people. Mm-hmm. So I can't even imagine the kind of scale and scope that you're dealing with. So.
Yeah. And actually, and then if it's talking about the Eldamon playtest, which we are, I am not letting everyone in just because we have over 100 plus playtesters currently. So it's, we don't need that many, we might let a few more in here and there, but we have a lot of playtesters already. So not everyone who filled out information and NDAs was going to get let in. So I do apologize for that, but that's just unfortunately the way it is. Well, okay. You can play an Indigo themed Dragon Alchemist, but not in an Eldamon playtest. You can't, because we're playing Eldamon. So it's completely separate. And you play with yourself. That came out wrong, but you play with your own groups. We don't, for the way our Eldamon, the way our playtest works is that you play either with your own groups or you play, basically play with your own groups. Usually people get together a group and then they play with either 1 or 3 or 5 people, and then they give me NDAs from their players, and that's it. So no one in the Eldamon playtest really plays with each other. It's all with their own home groups. So.
Sounds like, Captain Relic, maybe you need to try a game that is not Pathfinder 2. Maybe you should go and try one of these other games that we've
the thesis to get back to the main topic.
Yeah, there's so many other games.
Go play a Fate game where everybody's a dragon.
No, but he said specifically that he found Fate games, but none of them had a dragon.
Yeah, you know what?
Make your own. That is Fate.
Or,
there you go. Yeah,
you know what?
Run a game.
Play Flamecraft. Flamecraft, very popular board game where you're playing you're playing dragons. It's a world where dragons and humans make food. It's actually very, very popular. All right, Dragon, stop. I don't want to ban you, but I will. All right, enough. So, anyhow, my point is that when I was trying out these 2 new games, it definitely exercised my brain in new ways, which was nice. And I get that when I play board games, and I get that when I play video games and other things or read books, but it was definitely the first time that it's happened to me, I guess, in a role-playing game that was just, I don't know, different. I mean, the only other closest thing I had from that, which was the last time I had a good experience, believe it or not. Okay, you want to hear how geeky I am? Back in the mid-90s, live Vampire the Masquerade.
Little LARP action.
Well, not only that, it was like in a club in Manhattan with over 300 people that went from, no joke, from like 10 at night to like 6 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
It was all night long, and I somehow got the bodyguard of the prince, of all things. So I was like one of the very busy people during this LARP. Like, I was very busy, and I actually got to meet a lot of people just by being that person, and I had no idea what was going on, and it was crazy, but it was fun. It was fun. It was chaos. Oh, it was that madness, because that was also back in the mid 90s when no one had cell phones, and like it was just bizarre. It was so weird. So
yeah, I mean, I never. It's the funny thing is, when I was in my 20s or teens, like I always thought LARPing was really, really strange, but now I probably would enjoy it more. I do enjoy those kind of games where you get really it's really just all about the characterization, essentially acting.
But none of us knew what was going on, though. Keep in mind, it was like, I mean, there was some internet, but it wasn't like, everyone like just knew, there was no, I just know what we're supposed to do. It was just new to everyone. Like, every aspect of the game was new, everyone had to like learn what was going on, and it was really strange and bizarre. And it's hard to explain to people who didn't grow up in the 80s or the 90s when this was all new. Like, when it was all just happening. And, even I'd say in the early 2000s, where this just wasn't assumed. Like, you just didn't know what role-playing was, or D&D, or any of this stuff. You had to, like, figure it out, like, with your friends. You couldn't, which is only funny, because I was watching a video on YouTube, and someone said, why is it every single one of these books starts off with, what is role-playing?
Because not everybody knows.
I understand, but it was interesting that these are modern books, but most of them had very bad. It's not like, wasn't it they asked the question? It's that they had like a 1-paragraph answer, and one of them even had. I don't know if you heard about this, was on the internet.
The Critical Role one that was just like Google this on
the Critical Role one. It's like, you want to know what role playing is? Go to Google and type in what is role playing. That's your answer.
Yeah. That's a little
dismissive. I mean, it's a little petty, I think.
I feel like that was a very weird thing. It didn't just say Google what is role playing. It was a kind of in keeping with Critical Role themselves. It was like Google, and then it named like Google actual plays, and then watch them playing it. See what they're doing there?
Yeah.
That is role playing, which is more in keeping with their brand, but also I feel like is maybe even worse than asking someone to Google what is role playing, because they will now learn what professional actors do.
Yes. That's
and think that they have to do that.
That is actually way worse. Actually, I did a first look stream, which is where I open up an RPG that I haven't really looked for before, and we did Fabula Ultima, which is an Italian-based game that basically tries to emulate some of like the classic, Japanese style console-based role-playing games, right? Your Final Fantasies and your Chrono Triggers and stuff like that, Dragon Quest. And I was going through the book, and I was like, there was a really long section with a lot of detail about like what is a tabletop role-playing game, with things like you'll need pencils and erasers, and I was like kind of disparaging it a little bit.
Derik?
Because I was like,
no.
Yeah. And I was like, if someone's buying Fabula Ultima, all right, they know what a role-playing game is. And because we assumed that the market that this group was going for was 5e players and come play their game. The creator ended up kind of getting in contact with us through Twitter and through YouTube comments, and was basically like, I wrote that because I don't care at all about the 5e audience. In fact, I'd rather they didn't come play my game. I wrote my game for people who had never played a pen and paper game and had only ever played RPGs on a console or on a computer. And I'm hoping that this game would help them, get them into playing, tabletop role-playing games. So I wrote that section specifically because I was targeting people who literally had never played role-playing games before, but maybe had never even played like a physical game before. Like, you need pencils for this game. It's not digital.
See?
And I thought that was really, really interesting.
That brings up an interesting point, because in the video game world, they're always complaining about the tutorial levels. Like, do you really need to show me how to move. And like, nowadays, like in the
People always complain about whatever the game does to try to teach you the game. First, people were complaining about the guidebooks being too hard to like read through. And they wanted to have the tutorial levels.
I'll explain something. The reason they needed it is because there was no standardization for like move and the jump button, and like those were just not standard controls in video games. No one had it. Nowadays, not only do most games use the same control scheme, but most games you can change the control scheme,
Sure.
and so
I still appreciate a tutorial level because I want to see how high and long I will jump before I get thrown into whatever ridiculously hardcore mode that I have put the game into where I'll just die instantly.
Okay, fair enough. But the point is, it's a very controversial because it doesn't need to be 5 minutes, doesn't need 10 minutes. Some of them are an hour long, like the new Zelda game. People, the tutorial area is so long that some people just stay there. They don't even leave because it's gigantic.
I mean, that's certainly
enormous.
fair.
It's enormous.
That's fair,
area.
and I have said before that I bounced off of Breath of the Wild due to having spent almost 40 hours in the tutorial islands and realizing that I hadn't really accomplished very much during that time.
It sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's obviously a masterpiece game that is designed in the perfect way to make me suffer if I try to play it, because I like so many of the things that are in the game, but I'm very completionist and I will not leave until I get the things. But I have to climb and possibly take 6 attempts climbing a thing that I'm maybe not supposed to climb, and then I find that there was nothing on top of it. And I'm like, okay, there was nothing on top of that.
Could it be that Mark is just
20 minutes.
bad at playing video games?
No.
It's just that game was anti-optimized for me.
That's something else. That's a whole
As
other...
I mentioned before, a worse version of it, Immortals Phoenix Rising, clearly worse than Breath of the Wild, and clearly a knockoff. But it had one feature on it where if you could get to a high point, you could do like a weird Farsight thing where you move the switch around, and it, if you are looking at a point of interest, it tags in its vicinity. And just by adding that one feature, it just made it completely playable for me, because with Zelda, not knowing if there was something there made me spend way too long trying to find it.
Well, that's game design for you.
I do not have that problem.
It's me. It's not in general. It's me.
I basically race through games as quickly as possible.
What?
Oh yeah, like when I played Final Fantasy VIII the first time, there's like a item or something that you can get pretty early on that makes it so you don't have the random encounters.
Oh well, that's different.
And all of the bosses in that game, in that game are like level locked to you. So if you're level 20, they're level 20. If you're level 50, they're level 50. So I put that on, and then I never picked up anything else in the entire rest of the game. No items, no nothing. I just went through everything as quickly as possible and then beat the game in like under 10 hours.
Well,
there you go.
And
like there are people who like speed runs, and that is completely cool.
But not speed running either. I don't want to cheat. I just don't want to be hassled. Like, that's one of the reasons why I bounce off of MMOs at the end game. Why whenever I get to max level in MMO, I quit.
It's very grindy at the end game.
I do not like grinding.
I only played it enough so that I could write for my paper a little bit about endgame content once I got to the end game, but it was pretty boring to me. I have to agree. Whereas getting up there was pretty interesting.
I'm like weird. When I played World of Warcraft, I would go mostly by myself. Sometimes with groups. Eventually they added like the dungeon finders where you could just get into a dungeon. But I would go and I would just do quests, and I would go into a zone, and I'd go to the quest hub, and I'd let them guide me around the zone through the quest.
Take a tour. It's a theme park MMO for a reason. Go to the theme park.
And I would be like, oh, cool. I get to experience the story of this zone through the actions of the quests. And then when it was done, it was like, where's the next carrot leading me to? Okay, and I'm level 30
this
now.
Zone is a little bit higher level. Maybe
I'll go to this zone. There. And then I get to level 60, and then and a lot of people hate that part. In fact, I think now in World of Warcraft, you pay a premium amount of money, they'll just shortcut you that and put you right to the max level. And they're like, a lot of people go, the game doesn't start until 85, or 90 or whatever. And for me, as soon as I would get to that highest level, I would just be like, I would be done with the character, and I wouldn't necessarily delete them, but I would re-roll. I'd make a new character, or sometimes I would just cancel my account.
It's
I'd be
different play styles.
I've been playing for 4 or 5 months. I paid $50 plus $50 in subs fees. I'm good. I'm done. So
yeah. I'm more like you on that one, but when it comes to a non-MMO where there is a certain amount of content after which you can be said to have done all of the things, I always want to do it all.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that idea would ever work? Do you think that would work in like a Pathfinder or D20 game where like
a completionist?
No. Like where you go through the whole game, like, and then you get
and
to
it
20.
Only starts at level 20.
Yeah, you get to 20, and then like you play at 20 without leveling for like months and months and months and months. Like nobody.
And where you're just grinding instances of the same dungeon over and over again. And the GM just tells you, okay, you beat Karzug again, and he says, no, my plans have been ruined, my spire of avarice destroyed. And this time, roll D100. Oh, 100! You did it! We beat it for the 100th time, and now you get his mythic glaive intelligent item drop that I know you've been looking for.
I hate to break it to you, like there's a lot of games. Shovel Knight does that.
By the way, nerd alert that you knew that Karzug's glaive is intelligent, but
Shovel Knight does that.
The adventure.
There's a whole bunch of games that do that. Basically, all the best roguelikes do that already. By the way, so let's see, Shovel Knight, and what was the other one that just came out with the sequel?
Wait, why is Shovel Knight? What do you mean? Shovel Knight's not making you do the same thing 100 times? No, not
Shovel Knight. Sorry, not Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight is cool, but it...
All right. I made a mistake. Hold on.
Here, you feel very personally attacked here.
I am, because I can't remember. It just came out. It was a sequel to a very good...
Are you talking about Darkest Dungeon?
No. Darkest Dungeon does that too, by the way. Darkest Dungeon is literally, you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Like, that's it. And Darkest Dungeon 2. And you do unlock... You see, that's how they do it. Wait, god damn it. I'm so bad at this. My brain is fried. You guys keep talking. I'm going to look up my game list.
Sure.
And
sure. There's a super chat that says in tabletop RPGs, you can create backstories and roleplay your characters more than in video games.
Is that necessarily true?
I don't know if that is true. I think that there are some people who do really big roleplay in MMOs. They go on roleplay servers and they're always in character.
Yeah.
I try to be like somewhat in character with my characters when I play, but like mostly I would go out of character so I could coordinate with other people.
So I'll give you an example for this. So our community mega game, which we call Northern Reaches, each turn, which is a week long, runs from Sunday to Saturday. You get 3 campaign actions. And you can use those campaign actions to like go on an adventure, which means playing in another GM's game. You could use it to craft items and stuff like that. But we have a bot in our Discord that tracks how many messages you make in a certain channel, which is a role-playing channel. And when every time you message, you get a certain amount of experience points and you level up. And those levels actually translate to XP for your characters. We have people who are like 2 or 3 levels higher than the other people in the game because they role play so much. And like for them, like the fun of the game isn't actually playing the game. It's just talking in character. And
is the level that is there, that's just the Discord level, right? Their character isn't 3 levels higher, are they?
Yeah. They get experience, which goes to their PC.
So wait, that means that they're just 3 levels higher than everyone else because they're constantly in the tavern thread,
yes.
like doing role playing.
Yes.
So by the
constantly
way,
though, like all the time, and it's like very strict. Like if you're just if you're just spamming or whatever, like or if you're not talking in character, we will ban you and you won't be able to play anymore. But like, people just like that's how they want to engage on the game, like adventuring.
Are they just the highest level characters that are around? It's just like
I mean, some of them are also the people who have gone on the most adventures. So some of them are just like some of them are just like gamers. But we have a bunch of people. It would still be
hilarious if they weren't, and they were just like the Waldorf and Statler that are just like, oh, we always stay at the tavern. We don't go on adventures, but we're getting up 3 times as fast as you all are out there fighting.
So
yeah,
any roguelike does exactly what you described, Derik. Like the one I was thinking of was Rogue Legacy 2, Rogue Legacy and Rogue Legacy 2.
Rogue Legacy, yeah. Okay.
That you just start off every time, and you know what? The one I know you play a fair amount, Hades. That is completely. You just start off at the beginning every time in Spelunky 2, Slay the Spire,
Sure.
Dead Cells, Into the Gungeon.
There's a lot of story
They all do
progression
that.
in Hades that some of these other ones don't quite as much have. But
you know, Shadow Draken talked about the variety of games they like to play, and they said they love sandbox games. I will say that, like, I don't play video games very often, but like when I do and get into a video game, it's usually one that it does not have a story. Like I said, like I'll play like a Total War game where it's just like, and I won't play the I won't play the story mode. You know,
that's that is
SimCity.
Right,
Yeah,
that's actually so. I actually did a lot of research on that.
Not anymore. Not much anymore. But I used to be really into Minecraft.
I was gonna say, right. So Minecraft, SimCity, any of those games, those sim games. Will Wright, I used to work indirectly with him, like on Spore and other stuff, and he was a genius, and he still is a genius. But he was basically explained the whole concept of and I've mentioned this before, is that by having the arcs of having short-term, mid-term, long-term, very long-term, very, very long-term, like by having all these not cascaded, but nested goals that you can then, because that's how life works. If you give people nested goals with clear objectives, and most importantly, each goal helps the other goals move forward, then you will build your own stories. And that's the secret of SimCity and Minecraft and all these other games, because then they also give you tools, which is also, by the way, the secret for the new Zelda game, because they also do that. It's inside. It's actually the best of both worlds, because it's like we give you lots of tools for you to build your own narrative, and you're inside a world too, when you can follow that narrative, or you can build your narrative around this world, which is scary.
I think some of the more successful MMOs kind of follow a similar
and the more
pattern.
successful MMOs do that as well. It's, and Minecraft obviously does that. It's which is only funny because if anyone read Generation X by Douglas Copeland, in that book, which came out like in the early 90s, he explains a game that's exactly like Minecraft, exactly, and it's a huge hit. And that's what the whole book is. Part of the book is about them creating a video game based on like Minecraft. And then Minecraft came out and like years later, and it was like, oh my god, he predicted this by like 10 years, and he's the guy who came up with literally the term Generation X. So I don't think anyone's read that book.
The Brass Dragon did make a point where he said, to rephrase, TTRPGs allow for more creative and flavor freedom than you could do in a video game. I will agree with that. I mean, ultimately, no matter how expressive any of these games are, from SimCity to The Sims to Minecraft, at the end of the day, a game master is limited by nothing, right? Like,
they could allow anything if they want to,
right?
And
exactly.
the video game will have some limitations,
right?
That's certainly true,
right? Like you said, you can make a dragonborn with a fairy dragon-like appearance, but you can't really do that in a game like Neverwinter, but which is a video game, but you could do that in your 5e campaign. So, I think I think that's really, I agree with you. I think it's not a big part for me, but I think that self-expression is a big part. Like, obviously, like for this Captain Relic person, like self-expression through RPGs is very, very important to them.
Hey, what do you think all those microtransactions are for? Because people want to self-express, and it's...
Yeah. But it's not a big deal for me. Like, I don't care about self-expression. Like, I'll give you an example. Yeah. I know I'm not like the target market for video games, but like I used to play, Heroes of the Storm, Dota, I never played Fortnite or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I have never spent a single dollar on like a skin for any game ever. Or when I played Arena or Magic the Arena or like Moto, I never bought premium backs or cool. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah, I never have.
Yeah, Derek, you and I are just not good customers for those.
Yeah, but you're not because you're not aware. So, man, I can do an entire stream on this topic, because whales constitute like 0.01% of the audience, but they constitute like 90% of the profit. So most people aren't. Most people are not that.
Right. Well, right. I've given you my tinfoil hat theory, right? Where I said that people who buy premium stuff and like Magic Together online or Arena get more favorable draws, because in my like
Could be.
the game would rather they be happy than you who spent no money. Like if like the game goes, okay, here's player A has spent $10,000 on this game. Player B has spent $50. Which player do you think they should care about keeping happy?
In theory,
and
that's
engaged?
illegal. But anyhow,
Their algorithm is not publicly the.
if they
hand
ever find
algorithm
out, though, they could have to offer refunds. That actually just happened with YouTube. Is that
What are you talking? I read about a video game. This was on what is it called? It's a Game Designer Expo or whatever game. There's like a video
well,
game.
I guarantee that's illegal in Europe.
Okay, where they said
What you're
there was a problem that they were having with a shooter game where
That's
you
different. I actually know what you're talking about, but yeah,
bad players would always reload and or would never reload.
Right.
And so they would be shooting in the next encounter and they would run out of ammo and have to reload. And while they were reloading, they would get killed. And so they were like, oh, but really good players are smart and they strategically and tactically know when to reload between waves or whatever of monsters. And they're like, but how do we solve this issue? And so what they did is they go, well, the last couple of bullets in your clip, which good players will never get to because they don't let themselves run empty, but bad players get to, we'll make those do bonus damage. That way it balances out. So when you're a bad player and you don't reload strategically, we'll just make your last couple of bullets do it.
Big difference between making game design decisions like that versus in a game that can be played competitively, just actively cheating for the person who spent money.
Competitively.
No,
though.
that's because everyone's using the same rules as opposed to.
Wait. In Magic the Gathering Arena, if it was a cash for tournament, which they are very rare, okay, fine. Everyone gets the same auto shuffler. But if this is like generic casual play, which is what everything else in the Magic the Gathering Arena is, then yeah, why wouldn't you want to keep your, whales happy?
Well,
how is
it's
that
illegal in Europe? That's why. And I'm going to tell you why, because I don't know if you remember this, but there used to be all those poker sites. Remember, like Poker Stars, and like I used to play those a lot.
I never
played them a lot. Well, it turned out
I'm very bad at poker.
Oh, really? We should play. I'm fantastic at poker.
Wait, now that he said he was bad and you're good, you want to play?
No, God, yes.
That sounds exploitative.
Because he's probably lying, and I'll still destroy him because I'm like, I play tournaments all the time and win. But I definitely want to play you at poker. But anyhow, I used to play a lot. First of all these sites, so there used to be like 500 of these sites that were all owned by 5 companies. There was actually only 5 companies at all. And it turned out that they were cheating, and they were allowing their best players and their sponsored players to cheat and see other people's cards. And they were shut down and raided by the FBI. Simultaneously, all 5 companies at the same time were raided and all shut down, and the poker was gone from the internet for like a year or two because you can't do that. That's why. That's, in fact, you can look it up. It's famous. There's a lot of information. They were sued and they had to give out their money. It was a lot.
Then why wouldn't they publicly disclose how their shuffling algorithm works?
Well, because this was in the early 2000s.
No, I'm saying Magic the Gathering Arena.
If they give the details, that may be easier to hack.
To be clear, the best of one format in Magic the Gathering Arena is the most popular format by far, and it's one they push.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now,
and they have said they use a hand smoothing algorithm.
Yes,
because normally in Magic the Gathering it's just straight up random, right? Randomly sort your deck, and then that whatever comes off the stack in the the queue comes off the queue, right? But that's best of 3. Where variance is sort of moderated by the fact that you have to win 2 out of 3. But when in the best of 1, they say in their thing, they use a hand smoothing algorithm, but they have never detailed how or why that works.
I mean, I guess if that's a good question for you, Steven. If they publicly admit that they use a hand smoothing algorithm,
as long as they do it for everyone, it's legal.
Does it make it legal if they announce that they're using hand smoothing?
As long as you do it for everyone. If everyone's playing by the same rules, it's legal.
But what if the rule that is the same rules that everyone is playing by is if total money spent, a variable called total money spent parentheses player 1
is
illegal. Greater than
that's illegal.
Could you have a game where it's like, okay, but like aren't there games where you can like buy with real money cash from the microtransaction shops and it gives you a plus 10% chance of increased loot drops for the next 2 hours?
Yes, but that's not cash money, and you're not playing in casino like based
Oh,
games.
because the card game is what makes it sketchier. I see. But what if? Okay, so I'm gonna try to find another way. So what if there are like really rare cards that you cannot get unless you paid them money, or very, very, very unlikely, and they had a hand smoothing algorithm that it didn't benefit players who had paid more money. But what it did was it made those super rare, hard to get cards easier to be drawn.
Yeah, they
Which,
already
of course,
do that.
only the people who paid and a few very lucky people who got them on the 1 in a million
They
chance of
already do
drawing
that.
them
That's actually
would have those.
Yeah, they already have that. That's already in the current Magic the Gathering, the Lord of the Rings set, because you can only get the best cards by paying these like for $40 sets.
But could they legally create a hand smoothing algorithm that makes it so those best cards also get drawn more easily in a beneficial way?
Again, if everyone is using,
it's an algorithm that's for everyone.
Using the same rules and it's public, then yes, you're allowed to do that.
But if it was private, what the rules were, then they would be in trouble?
They would be in trouble, especially if it has to do with, if it's messing up anything. Once you start dealing with real money, it's the United States doesn't have a lot of rules on this, but Europe does. Europe actually has very strict rules on this recently because of loot boxes. Loot boxes used to be everywhere. They got rid of them. And again, I can go into this, but long story short is that they were saying, the video game companies were saying, it's loot boxes are not gambling. Loot boxes are not gambling. And yet every single meta tag, they looked at all the code, like all the meta tags, all the advertising, everything they had to do was all gambling based. Like everything. It was like so heavily gambling based that it was like, dude, you're saying it's not gambling, yet every single thing that you did supports this as gambling. And that's 100%. Why, right, and they got rid of it, and it's like now it's pretty much gone for most gamings. But in Europe they have rules, like if you are going to do stuff like that.
Well, the Europeans are much more civilized than we
are. They are, but they also, they're better at this. But very long story short is that you have to have the rules out there and explain what the algorithm is. It's the same way when you buy the lottery ticket and it says like what your odds are. You know, it's like really the same thing. Like if you look at the fine print, you will be able to find what your odds are finding certain types of cards are. Like, you know, they can keep it secret to a point, but if a government came around, I'll put it this way. If you aren't doing it on the up and up, and then the government started to poke around and wanted to see this, and you can't defend it, and you actually, you know, have to, like, you could end up owing a lot of money to a lot of people in the class action lawsuit or something like that, which has happened. And, you know, this happens all the time. And that's what happened in the United States. In the United States, you get class action lawsuits. In Europe, they give them a fine, and then they tell them you can't do it anymore. And if you do it, we're going to shut you down permanently. So they pay more attention to Europe because...
Well, nothing I have to personally worry about.
It's nothing you have to worry about, but very, very easy way to think of it is that everything you're describing, it's like, as long as everyone's using the same rules, like if like all of a sudden there was like some way that now there's there's already 4 aces. There's 8 aces in a standard deck of cards. As long as everyone is pulling from the same deck, that's legal. That's completely fine. What is illegal is that I can see your cards, your whole cards, your hand cards, and you can't see mine. That's cheating. Because illegal.
Stephen, I had glasses of Urza, which allowed me to look at my other player's hand.
Well, in that case,
you have the Millennium Eye.
No, that's legal. Glasses of Urza doesn't allow you to see person's head. But other than that, but if you were playing, you got poker in my Magic, and my Magic in your poker. But I totally know what you're getting at, because this was a big deal in the video game. See, this is why I use my video game knowledge for everything, because I've said it in the past. The video game world is always a few years ahead of the TTRPG world, it seems, and this stuff always seems to already happen. And then by the time it shows up here, I'm like, yeah, I already saw that, kind of know where that's going.
So we had a super chat from Tiger Eye. I was wondering if any of us are going to play Baldur's Gate 3 when complete, and if any of us played the early release.
So by the way, the answer to that is, I did. When he said that, I said, I don't know what BG3 means.
Oh my God.
So that should answer that question.
Okay, we talked about this a few weeks ago. There was a lot of people who never heard of Baldur's Gate. And someone even wrote, oh, I know tons of people who play video games, and I never heard of Baldur's Gate 2, and I know everyone.
Okay, I'm wait. That's different.
I was like, I know, but the point is, I'm like...
I played Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I'm saying I didn't know anything about 3.
No one's ever heard of this. I'm like, No one's ever heard of this. Really?
Go for the eyes, boo.
It's like one of the most popular worlds ever created for 5e. It's like really up there, but whatever. I played the beginning of Baldur's Gate 3 because what is it, Lavarian Studios is one of my favorite studios. They are they're an A++. They're what BioWare used to be, but because they're European, they're actually better than BioWare, although I think BioWare was Canadian. But they're better because they're insane. They're absolutely insane over there. So that's the good news.
BioWare was a Canadian company.
Yes. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was using
Oh,
my
yeah, they
brain.
did. BioWare was awesome. They
Yeah,
did.
BioWare was fantastic.
They did
Until got
Dragon
bought out.
Age. And,
Yeah, they were the game
They did
makers,
Baldur's
the
Gate,
game
Neverwinter
designers.
Nights.
Well, they did Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I mean, they were the originals. Baldur's Gate 3, I played it just to get the feel for it, but then I knew it was going to go through a billion iterations, so I stopped. But the second Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, I'm playing it. So
Oh, they did. I forgot they also did.
they did
They did
everything.
the Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
Knights of the Old Republic is one of those games, when that came out, everyone, and I mean everyone, was telling me I had to play that game. And that has the worst opening ever. It took me 20 freaking tries to get past the first few hours. And then I finally did, and damn, that game got good. Like, it just took the first couple of hours on the game were terrible. And I forced myself, and it was so good.
There you go.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3, if it ever gets released, I forget. It's going to be a long time before that game's discounted. A long time. It's gonna
I
probably
definitely
be a year.
know that Knights of the Old Republic does give a strong example of why alignment systems are even more troublesome in like a computer game than they are at an open tabletop.
Well, that was a big deal at the time. Like that
like
was
the light side versus dark side stuff.
Yes,
it just like
at E3
really didn't work.
They all talked about. You know why? Because they wanted to give the illusion of choice, and people were talking about that.
It really didn't work, and it didn't give you the choices that you were supposed to have.
No.
Like, my friend really wanted to play Emperor Palpatine in Knights of the Old Republic 2. That's exactly the character he wanted to play.
That's who I played.
He wanted to but he wanted to be conniving. He pretends to be everybody's friend, and he's going to betray everybody and be evil. Like the lawful evil style Sith. And you even have a mentor who like suggests that you do some things that are evil like that are just in lines that he could say, oh, yes, we have rescued this woman. I am going to pretend to befriend her so that I can make her be like dependent upon me, and she will serve me as my subordinate. And then I can just use her as a disposable pawn. There's a line in the game that he selected. Then he went over to that person and had some options where it was like, you can either like yell at her or like be nice to her. Literally after he said, I will do this, to completely lie. And he was nice to her. And like, light side points gained. You have lost Force Lightning. You cannot cast Force Lightning. He was like, what?
You got to be a dick all the time.
You have to be, you even cannot take the choices that the game itself offers you.
Look,
you have to just be the chaotic evil, just murdering people in the streets and just be mean to them. You can't even play like a Sith from Star Wars and be dark side.
Peace is a lie. Okay. Through passion, we find power. Through power, we find victory. I don't remember the credo of the Sith.
Yeah, you're close.
That's somewhat close.
Yeah, that's close.
Disturbingly,
passion,
that's
we
probably
find power. Through power, we find victory. Through victory, we find. I forgot how it goes, but
yeah.
Well, keep in mind. So back then, that was actually a big thing with all video games. So back in those days, what ended up happening is that all these games are very linear, and that illusion of choice was incredibly popular, and lots and lots and lots of games ended up adding that. And BioWare ended up kept refining and fine-tuning that and added it to pretty much all their games at that point. And so they gave a lot of those choice variables where the game would branch and go in different directions. Nowadays, because of technology and the way open world games have changed, you still have it, but they don't have a black and white, you're good, you're bad system. They do it more overtly. In fact, Cyberpunk 2077 did it probably the best of all games I've seen, because there's lots of choices, and a lot of them are, quote, good, bad, or other, but they don't label them. You just do them, and then there's consequences for what you do. That certain adventures and side quests are just gone, or certain people are just gone, or they're dead, or other things open up, and that's just it. There's no black and white system saying you lose this. But also, that's technology. Like, the technology was limited at the time. But in modern open world games, that's how they do it. And that's the right way to do it. And of all I mean, say what you want about Cyberpunk. By the way, the new version's coming out in a couple of weeks. And they completely rewrote the game. And that game got misaligned. That game was fantastic. I will take the task anyone who had problems with that game. There was issues, but they're wrong. They were just jumping on the bandwagon to bash that game because it was fun to bash. But I mean, that game was great.
So, you were talking about the various elements of the game, and it made me kind of have an interesting thought that's somewhat related to our subject today. So, Steven, you went to Origins.
Yes.
You played some role-playing games.
Yes.
That you hadn't played before.
Yes.
You had a good time.
Yes.
So what's the next step? I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to play these games? Or are you going to take something from one of these games and try to put
I've already said I'll run some other game for you, Steven. We've talked about it multiple times when Derik is on. It's like, well, we should do this. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll run the Blades in the Dark for you too and some other people. I'll run another thing. We can do it, Steven.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if anything, I'll probably try to maybe you bring some of your games with you to Gen Con, because Lord knows I know 1 billion people at Gen Con. So
what you're basically saying is, I got to make sure that wasn't a fluke. We gotta run that back.
No,
yeah, he needs to be reassured, because his other con experiences have been terrible up to that point.
No.
100% of the time. Bad to terrible.
I need to play those type of games with people I trust. And people I know. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, generally, it's playing with people you know is safer.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at the beginning. For me, I've had some amazing experiences, but it's risky because all of my worst experiences.
Let me ask a question. I'm curious, because one of the main ways that I have played role-playing games outside of my group, which is pretty much at cons, because I don't do anything else like that, like Pathfinder Society, it has been at conventions as part of the Indie Games on Demand network, which is they run a bunch of slots. It's pick up and play. It's GMs basically sign up to run a certain number of slots per con, and then they just say, hey, I can run one of these 20 games. You know, the group kind of just votes and picks, and so it's like, but it's all indie small press game stuff. You're playing with a lot of random people there, and that 10 years ago or whatever is where the X card got developed, right? Which was a big index card in the middle of the table, because the idea was you wanted to be able to reach out and deal if someone was getting a little inappropriate, because you wanted to be able to make sure you could set people's permissions. Is the X card something that the Pathfinder Society requires?
I mean, I don't think the Pathfinder Society requires everyone to bring an X card, but the Pathfinder core rulebook mentions X cards and lines of bells as things that you might want to consider or talk about.
Oh, okay. No, that's really good. That's really good, because it's interesting to me, because I was like, I wonder if that's like a problem in Pathfinder Society. And it's
also Pathfinder Society typically goes with the Pathfinder baseline, which is just a suggestion for home games, but is just kind of a like, here's where we're at in doing things with like a lot of published Paizo adventures. If you want to do something that's very different from this, you should discuss it with your group, because we've put this as an accepted baseline, not to like tyrannically insist that everybody everywhere follows exactly that baseline, but just because if you don't have any baseline and people go in, they can have very different expectations. Sure. And that way, if you go in and suddenly something that is way outside of the Pathfinder baseline happens, without a discussion, you couldn't be like, hold on a second, this was outside the Pathfinder baseline. We should time out and talk about this.
Yeah. I mean, because like I've been X carded before, and I thought I was actually like not like embarrassed, but I was like, oh, thank you for letting me know that I was going down a line of
yeah, it's helpful.
Wow.
Nobody want. I mean,
like I didn't want to
most
make
people who are not complete jerks do not want to make people
in fact, I
uncomfortable.
say like the X card has changed, but when I was first introduced to it back in the early days of the indie stuff in the con moment, it was actually one side of the index card had a big red X on it, but the other side of the index card, this part has been forgotten. This
Has a picture of Derek's face on it.
no, it had a big green check mark,
Oh.
and it was a way to be like, keep going,
Oh,
like right,
okay.
like give us more. We're all, and so like, without interrupting someone's scene.
Yeah.
So like, they start going down a line, Steven, fifth base, and I flip over I flip it to the
that
green
fiasco
circle.
game, I was like,
And
that thing is all X.
I start tapping the green
Oh my God.
check marks because I'm like, yeah, this is a great. I love where this is going.
Yeah, but
I'm basically
as with everything
I'm basically
in life,
cheering you on from the
as with
sidelines.
everything in life, the negative reinforcement
Yes.
and the negative feedback became the thing that everybody knows.
Yes, of course, exactly. And,
When,
and that-
That's just
and I-
true
and I-
literally everywhere.
Yes.
YouTube comments.
Yes.
Since we're
but
on
it's a
YouTube,
shame.
but-
It's a shame because I love to be able to be like, I love being able to like applaud.
I would just like to know that too, because sometimes I'm in the middle of doing something,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking like, am I doing too much? Should I just like stop right now because
Right, like,
it's working well, but there's also other people
Did
that I
you,
kind of want to.
you
pass
want like
the
a
ball
temper,
over
you
to
want
them
like
and
a temperature
Yeah,
check.
and if I
where-
see people giving me a green check mark, then that would be something that I will keep going. This is as interesting as it seems like it is.
So by the
Yeah.
way,
Whereas if
did
I
you,
don't see it, then I'll be okay. Yeah, let's stop and do something else. So I think that positive feedback like that is actually very helpful.
did you ever see that video, Derek, that I sent you from the fiasco game?
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh,
So Friday, I'm going to be at Smith's,
oh boy.
and we're going to be in his basement for our Legend of the High
Oh,
Rings
boy.
game, and I'm going to watch it there. I want him to be there when I watch it.
It's bad. And the whole thing is, that was a 4-hour game, and I only recorded 1 minute, and that 1 minute is pretty much, imagine that 1 minute for 4 hours.
Right.
It
To be fair,
was-
you guys played Fiasco far longer than normal people play Fiasco.
well,
but,
that game would not. It was so.
Yeah, is it supposed to go that long?
It was so.
I mean,
bad.
I mean,
It
Not
was
from my
so
knowledge,
bad.
but I'm not like a fiasco.
Well, I always say whenever I'm there, even there's no game master in Fiasco, but I'm very much like and scene, right? Like we've clarified what this was
The
at stake
scenes
in
would
this scene,
never stop,
and
They
we
were
ended,
so
and
good.
I'll like interact and be like,
So
kind of be like
Derek,
the director,
I
and call
think
cut
that
and call cut. They didn't have anybody calling
we can
cut,
then
so they
we
just
can
kept
then
going.
definitively
Oh,
say
they kept going.
that your absence was important in making it one of Steven's
Yes.
top 5 role
Yes,
playing
it
experience.
was.
If you were there, you actually would have ruined.
Yeah, you would have ruined it.
it by calling scene before it could get to the point that Steven liked.
You would have completely ruined the whole experience. No, it was.
Steven wouldn't have expected, I guess, because he wants to play with people
Right.
he knows, but it turned out that it was the perfect thing
Yeah.
to happen. And Steven, that's an example of the kind of thing where the con gives a perfect storm and it's just amazing.
No, yeah.
It's rare. It's more likely that you'll find one that
So-
is really on the bad end than really on the good end, but you will find both at cons.
The fun circle back to this is, for me, I would say like
Fun circles. You got a good night's sleep.
70% of my top game sessions of all time happened at cons. Right. So for me,
I've had good ones. Yeah.
I'm saying, but like I've had the opposite experience.
Wait, Steven, you've had good ones? You said that they range from bad to terrible.
No.
You said
When
they
I
always
was
all
playing
started.
new games.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I
saying
was
that.
at PaizoCon. I had a fantastic game with Jason, Akili, and my friends. And one of the patrons from Roll from Combat, it was the GM, and poor guy, we kind of like we took over that game. That game was way off the rails. And I have pictures of that. That's when Jason Keeley was literally on the table, like standing on the freaking table on the map, like doing like a war chant. And it was like, because there was beer. And if you remember at PaizoCon, you could drink while we're playing Pathfinder. And then we were fighting dragons, and it was total chaos. I got several pictures from that. It's nuts.
Well, my experiences, and even with new games, even with new people I don't know, I've had some of the most incredible and amazing gameplay moments, because it really highlights the power of role-playing games to bring people together and sort of provide you with a common interface for interacting with your fellow gamers. I love it. I mean, I'm a big fan of it.
I've had it with board games, but with role-playing games...
You know what's funny? Okay, opposite.
Yeah,
I
sure
hate playing board games with strangers. I love playing board games with my friends.
I agree.
For me, it depends on the board games.
Yeah,
but in the most part, I find that like Derik, that with board games that I often don't have as much of a matchup with just some random person with the degree to which I want to read the rules and to which other people want to just tell me the rules and give me an incomplete or incorrect set of rules.
Well, it depends
tend
on
not to match up. Whereas if I'm with people I know, then they all know that, and they know that the meta is, okay, Mark, read the rules and then explain the rules to us. And so that tends to work better for me.
Well, I don't know. Like, I just joined a board game group here, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't know a single one of these people. And the first thing the guy who like runs it, he was asking me, it's like, so what's your like level? Because they wanted to get an idea, and I'm like, I've been playing, it's like, what games you play?
I'm a 5th level Shadowcaster.
Well, no, because he wanted to know, like, do you get it? Because we were playing, so the very first game I played with him was Arc Nova, and they explained the rules to me, and, I almost won. It's like I got it very quickly, and then after that, I was talking to him, he's like, no, you get it. You know how these games, because I also was playing with a friend of mine at Gamma last year, and they never played a Euro-style game before, and we played one, and they hated it because they couldn't comprehend how the worker placement and the whole thing was working, because they just never played that type of game. So they just did not get it. They couldn't wrap their head around it. They were not having a good time. And this person was not a new gamer, but they never played that type of game before. So... And I like, very complex, heavy. I play like everything. I mean, we played that cartographer game, which was very light, and that was a ton of fun. But that's, that's a very light, fun drawing game.
We bookended that with Oath and Root, which were both
pretty
medium. No, they're not super heavy. They're not like Twilight
super
Imperium or
heavy,
something.
but they're medium to heavy.
They're medium plus.
They're medium plus. They're medium to heavy. You got to pay attention, and you got to do
There's
a lot of
moving parts. There's a lot of
Yeah.
any game that relies on cards, and there's a lot to read.
Yeah,
it is always very, very overwhelming.
For sure. Especially if you have someone who wants to have a lay of the land with the cards, which I am.
Yeah.
So, like, if there's a mechanic where it's very important that it's like you mostly aren't using cards, but you do draw from this random deck, then I'm going to be like, I want to see what the rough distribution of things.
I want to know what every single card does in this deck.
Yeah.
Right. Like, no, I agree. Like, whenever I teach Root to anybody, I'll say, okay, most of the the majority of these cards are make an item, you get some victory points. But there are, in this deck, 5 ambush cards. 1 for mouse, 1 for rabbit, 1 for fox, and then 2 for bird. And
that's really good to know. That's the kind of thing that I will want to check before.
I want people to know that card exists and what the relative rarity is, because it does make a big impact to the game. And like, in terms of what does every single card in the game do, like, that to me is less important. But knowing that like ambush cards exist, I think is an example of where I do try to draw the line.
So, right. Or like knowing in Settlers of Catan that like there's cards that are for like that they're like kind of 4 to 5 categories of cards. So it's like there is a card called Monopoly that exists that can, if someone has it, they could take all of a particular resource from you. Like that, I feel like is a critical piece of information for all new players to have.
Everyone's always like, Settlers of Catan is a friendly. I'm like, try playing a Monopoly sometime after somebody just got all their, wood or whatever like that.
Yeah,
see how they feel.
That can wind up messing you up for more than one game. Like when I was at MIT, we used to like in my dorm, people play Settlers of Catan like a bunch of times. And one of my friends like tried to convince people, it's like, Mark is going to win. Just do these trades with me. I'll give you all this good ore that I have. I know you guys need ore. And I said, listen, guys, he's going to monopoly you for ore. I'm telling you, he is. I can tell. Look at his face. They were like, no, we trust him. He was like, yeah, believe me, I would never do that to you. then he did it.
Oh,
He
yes.
monopolied them for ore.
Of course.
Not only did he then not win that game, but no one ever trusted him again. And he started doing terribly in all of the future games because he had ruined all trust. Anytime later that we weren't sure about things or anybody was not sure, if anyone said, yeah, remember when he monopolied for ore? And they were, oh, yeah, right. We can't trust him.
Right.
Jesus.
Yeah. Priest says, I know friend groups who have banned Settlers because it's led to breakups. And Whipplestein said, Settlers of Catan at a friend's house was the first fight with my girlfriend.
Wow.
I believe it.
Okay. There you go then.
So that's what I'm saying. So, Settlers good. So, Steven.
Yes.
So what games am I bringing to Gen Con then? What games you got to give me a list of what you want to try.
Okay.
The chances are probably fairly good that I own it or have played it, but
And if Derik doesn't have an indie game that you want to play, which I think is like impossible because you don't know that
there's
many,
way too
other
many.
indie games, Steven, he will buy it by the time Gen
No, he already
Con
bought
is
everything that
around.
there was at Origins. There was nothing left by the time Derik was
I
done.
did buy a lot.
Yeah, see? So Derik will buy it
We can bring
anyway.
Fiasco
and
again.
he'll
We can
have
play
it
a
for Gen
different.
Con.
We can play a
Yeah, 'cause
different scene.
Yeah, the shoe will be on the other foot because at Gen Con, the Knights of Last Call aren't going. It's just me that's going.
Yes.
I think Alyssa might come, but
I
like
know
Bob and
a lot
Aaron
of people.
aren't going to be there.
That's
and
fine.
I
Well,
don't-
listen, that'll be enough. She was pretty.
Yeah,
outgoing.
no. She's my indie game,
Yeah.
co-conspirator.
Yeah, she knew like every game.
Yeah, she knows them all.
By
But,
the way, for you, all right, I'm giving everyone homework.
Ooh, all of us. Everyone watching too, or
Yes,
just Derik
everyone.
and me?
Everyone.
Okay.
There's a very, very good YouTube channel called No Pun Included. No Pun Included. It's a board game review site, but I actually like it a lot. He did a 1 hour Blood on the Clock Tower? Yes, Clock Tower. Blood on the Clock Tower and the history of Mafia and Werewolf. I know you hate those games.
I hate those games.
But
Yeah, I hate them.
a lot
I
of
hate
people
them.
do, right?
Mark, you and I are very similar.
Well, hold on. You should watch it because it's not only the history of where Mafia came from and Werewolf, and he talks to all the people, but it also goes into the psychology of why these games work and don't work and what goes into them, because these games are used quite often for team building exercises at tech companies. They're very often used, and why. And it's fascinating because then you'll also learn about types of gamers and what motivates them and why these games click for some people and why they don't.
They're bad. And you talk about
They're
destroying
not-
friendships
right,
with
that's
Settlers of
what it's
Catan.
about.
Talk about
is-
that. Let me tell you.
That's what it's about.
The
They're also
same
just
player
bad games.
who
Mhm.
monopolized the ore, just it happened. It was this guy created a live action version of Mafia that was being played at MIT, where basically you would have to go around and say bang to kill the person that you were doing the hit on. You'd have to actually find them, so they could actually
Mhm.
turtle up or hide somewhere or go with enough other people that they all the time that you would be seen.
Mhm.
And he made a bunch of mechanics for it. But anyway, there were players who were from several different dorms. One of the people was just very blatant, was a very skilled investigator who completely figured out who the Mafia were, had obvious 100% airtight proof. And so she revealed it to everybody else. And then the Mafia person just basically went to the other people from his dorm and just somehow convinced them against all logic to vote out one of the villagers who was to vote out the investigator and make them lose. And she got so mad that she came to the dorm and physically she was very small and not physically threatening, but started yelling. And it caused the housemaster of the dorm where the Mafia guy was from to send a letter to the student that that made the game, that was "Dear Mr. Last Name, it has come to my attention that it was an incident that inflamed anger between larger groups of people between those two dorms that came out of that game. So if you think Catan can be a friendship ender,
that's again. So back what I was saying. This was called. It's no pun included, Blood on the Clock Tower and the History of Mafia and Werewolf. And he goes through and explains, basically that's the issue of that. It goes through how social contracting work and whether if you lie to people and whether you're trying to trust them and then you're trying to make people believe you. It's incredibly fascinating because it then goes into gamer theory of even why people play certain types of characters, why they can't role play, and when they do role play, they role play themselves. It goes into a lot of interesting areas.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah,
I'll check it out.
Yeah, well, they have the author of a book who basically studied this, and as soon as he said that, I was like, because I know you said that on your stream, that's like, oh, people don't really role play. They don't really play. Oh, I'm a dwarf who's been lived for 1,000 years and blah blah blah. But they explained why. They said because human brains are just not really capable of doing that. It's very hard for us to not try to play a version of ourselves, and so that's why these games, when they do work and people are lying, it goes against the type or the comprehension of what you think these people are like. Even worse if they're your friends, because now your friends are lying to, and then that totally it could destroy friendships and then some. It's really interesting of like, oh, I always trust this person, or you even have like a spouse. I remember okay, we're going way back in the 80s. Okay.
That is way back.
That is way back in the 80s. Do you remember they used to have these murder mystery games? No one remembers this. Okay.
I actually do, but not from the actual 80s when, but like, just like we had an old murder mystery game that was like One Night Murder.
Right. So murder mystery
like
game,
that.
which is basically Mafia. It's the same thing. So like everyone have a role, and they'd have to figure out who the murderer was. And it was like
kind of different. It was more of role playing. You each had your own backstory and agenda of what you were trying to do, and then you tried to figure. As opposed to Mafia, that was more like it's generic. Everybody is just a generic person, and you just have to figure out who is the one killing the other people. Right.
So anyhow, and I remember at the time, my girlfriend at the time was playing the game with us, and then at the end of the game, it turned out that my girlfriend was the murderer, and I was so angry that it was her.
Why were you angry? She drew it at random.
She kept lying to me, and she lied to everyone, and she did so well, and I'm still angry to this day. And I remember it's like the feelings of betrayal, and trust was so deep because I couldn't believe it. I still remember, it's like imprinted in my mind when she was like, it was me who did it. I was like, like it was so shocking that it was like, but that's what it's all about. It's about how you see people in one way, and then when you see them another way, that it can really mess up friendship. It can mess up a lot. It's very interesting, this video. I'll find it. Everyone's asking to see it. Instead of me talking about it, I'll find it real quick. Hold on. And then we should wrap up.
Not too much longer. I got to dip out here.
I got a pickleball game, so I can't go longer either.
I have a racquetball game.
I know. I was thinking, it was like, you have a racquetball, I got pickleball.
I have a pickleball game is like the classic random suburbs excuse for not being able to stay or do something anymore.
Is it?
Yeah, I just don't know why, but it's just a lot of things. Like when we were doing something, and my little brother was just like, "Oh well, we have a pickleball game, so we have to go to the pickleball game." You'll just hear it a lot. Racquetball is a little more different.
Yes, well, racquetball's way less popular, obviously.
It used to be in the 80s. No, everyone used to play
is something that I actually at least hear about in other contexts. Pickleball is always the thing that seems to be like
growing game
something,
in the world.
Something that a given neighborhood is throwing in some suburban neighborhood, and then they have to go to
Pickleball's very easy to play. It's very fun. You can learn the rules in 1 minute. You can
the other thing that
usually be okay at it from the beginning.
I think the thing that pickleball really has going for it is, and again, I'm not trying to
space.
I'm not trying to disparage anybody who enjoys pickleball here. It's not the most physically challenging sport.
You think that?
No, but that is why it has become so popular, because
if you're playing doubles, Yes.
People who have, aren't maybe the most athletic person, or people who are overweight, or people who are older, or even young kids who might have a hard time playing some of these more intense.
That makes sense why it would be a neighborhood
Yeah,
block party game.
And you could be very good at it very quickly.
That's where I always hear it in neighborhood block party.
I'm not trying, right. Obviously, there are people, it's like table tennis.
You can get really good at
There
it.
are people who are really good at table tennis and would just like completely smoke anybody.
But I think everyone would agree that table tennis is not as physically demanding as like football.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Well, the pickleball, look it up. It's really
pickleball,
fun.
for those who don't know, pickleball is table tennis, but you're playing it at like human size, not a little miniature table. It's like if you were to play ping pong, but on a tennis court instead. Yeah. So
it's a little bit of tennis. But I mean, I play a lot of tennis, so if anything, tennis messes me up a little. But
I have never been able to master putting top spin on a forehand, so I'm really bad at tennis.
Oh, okay, so. I'm really good at tennis.
So, anyways,
but I like it a lot. It's fun. It takes a very little space, and that's actually the big thing. It's just that to maintain the courts is very easy because tennis takes up a huge amount of space.
Well, in my city, they've been taking down the tennis courts and putting in pickleball courts.
You can fit
twice as many
pickleball courts per tennis court, and they require no to little maintenance. And just math-wise, it's like, and people love it. And it's always doubles, almost always. So you get 4 people per thing.
That there is a noise issue.
It's very noisy. That's the problem. So people,
that sound of the paddle hitting the ball,
extremely noisy.
It's very like shrill.
It's very carries. Shrill. It's very there's a lot of problems with it, and they're trying to figure out, but there's no way to really do that. In fact, the one I'm playing, we're actually on a metal court, so it's like this plastic ball with hard plastic paddles hitting metal. So it's like ting 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 ting. It's
sounds awful.
It's well, I don't live near it, so it's fine by me. But
I'll take my racquetball court, which is surrounded in a concrete bunker.
I know, but I tried racquetball, and that's how I tore my knee again. So I'm done with racquetball.
Well, that's all right. I'm pretty sure that playing racquetball in my late 20s is how I tore my labrum.
Well, I tore my labrum too. The same week I tore my knee and my labrum, but unrelated. I tried to pick up something heavy and tore my labrum.
Right, I was hitting the ball. Anyways, so I do have to go, but
we have balls to play with.
Yeah, I look forward to playing some more games at Gen Con. Stephen, I'm very happy that you had such a because I mean, again, I try to read the room, and we were playing that Avatar game, and I could see you really kind of being like, oh, this is really cool. This is something different. And, it might have just been that you were like so delighted that this wasn't a horrible experience as you're so used to. And obviously I was not there for the fiasco game,
yes.
But the stories that came out of that, how proud you were of 5th base, like, which to be fair is now like part of our lexicon forever. And so, I was like, okay, well, yeah,
for those who want to know, 5th base is touring the Greek Isles. There, yeah. I can say it without getting in trouble. There we go.
All right, fair enough. But I was like, okay, good. Like he's getting it. And so it's really interesting that that you felt like it was such a eye-opening experience for you. And I for one am happy to have been part of it.
And to talk about Derik being a good GM, because Derik, I was the budgetar being the Earth budgetar trying to go into a fire town, and then the guards stopped me, and then the guards were angry because I killed so many of their friends, and it was my fault. And then I said, or was it? And he actually went with it. He goes, okay, roll. And then I rolled a 12. And then it was like, well, we're sorry that all of our guys got in the way of your boulders and died.
Right. Well, like as an example, which I think actually is kind of an interesting story to that.
I mean, they're the ones who are attacking Ba Sing Se, Steve.
Yes.
It's their fault.
That's exactly
right.
right.
You were just trying to defend the city.
There is no war in Ba Sing Se. But the other characters were kind of shocked because one of the characters who was playing a young boy, like 13, who was kind of a roguish, rakish character, that was his playbook. He was trying to infiltrate into the city, and I said, okay, I'm going to have you use your skills and ability, make a Powered by the Apocalypse check, and 2d6 plus stat. And he rolled low. which means that the GM makes a move. And I said, you know, you're sneaking around the alleyways and you think the coast is clear, when suddenly from a doorway, a hand reaches out into the alleyway, grabs you by the, you know, scruff of your neck or whatever, by the collar of your shirt, and yoinks you back into the room. And we kind of left it on like a little bit of a cliffhanger. And because the character had rolled low, so something consequential had happened. And you know, we're all like laughing, like, who is it? Who is it? And then the player who was playing that character was like, Dad? And I was like, yes, it is your dad. And and everyone like seemed really surprised at that, because they were all like, wait, what was your idea? And I said, my idea doesn't matter. That's a better idea. And I am gonna go with what that person just suggested, because yeah, absolutely. You know, narrative conveniences all happen all the time, especially in these kind of shows.
There we go.
And we went with it. And the idea was, because again, that to me was just a fantastic example of where I always say the idea that can live in just my mind will never be as good as the communal ability of all of us to create a story. Somebody else coming in and saying, hey, this is my idea. I was like, number one, that idea is better, so we're going to go with that. But number two, that makes that player feel like, wow, I'm really changing and impact. Like, I'm making suggestions, and the GM is going, yes, that's the way we're going with that. And you're like, I feel like I'm very empowered at this table. I feel like I'm really having my voice be heard. And like, it might be a situation where it's not even my character that's involved. Someone else on the other side of the table makes a fun suggestion about other character situations, and everyone's nodding their head going, yeah, that sounds awesome. And we go with that. You're not even in that scene, but you feel like you were the most impactful.
Yeah, it could have been another person who just was said, like, I am your father, or something like that, and then everyone laughs, and you're like, you know what?
It could have absolutely. It just so happened to be the exact character, but you're absolutely right, Mark. Like, if Steven had said that, he was like, I am your father, everyone's laughing, and I go, it is your father, and everyone, laughs again, and then you go with it, and you have fun with it, and that's where the challenge, the role playing challenge is because now the player and the GM, we have to adapt to this new established reality, this new established truth, and we have to make that. We are honor bound, duty bound.
Classic yes from improv, right? Because
exactly,
it was a move that the GM made. So that also tells us two things: that it's the father, and that this is something consequential and generally bad because the GM made the move. So like, now you get to think about okay, is the father working for the Fire Nation now?
And what ended up happening in Avatar, each character has different principles that they're torn between. They're seeking balance, but there's these two principles that they're torn between. And this character, this sort of roguish, rakish survivor, was torn between friendship and survival, right? Like looking after themselves or looking after their group of friends. And his father was like, what are you doing here? And kind of scolded him. He's like, I told you not to get involved. He was part of the rebel movement. And he said, you need to forget your friends. You need to take care of yourself. I didn't go through all of this just so you could end up killed. Get out of here. Like, basically, I'm sending you home. Like, I don't want to see you here. Listen to your father. Leave. And it suddenly put him in this crux. Like, the father was calling on him to survive, which is one of his kind of operating, modes. But at the same time, he had this duty to his friends. And so you got to see how this character and how this player who was playing it at the table, our buddy, our fellow patron, Dan, sort of grapple with the sort of yin yang distinction between these two sort of competing values. And it was really interesting. And it led to some really funny moments, but it also led to some pretty, impactful moments. And by the end of it, the character had proven himself, and his dad kind of begrudgingly gave him you were right, I was wrong, you did good, kid, keep your nose out of trouble. And it was kind of like this and that all happened just in a one shot. And so it was again, and that was separate from the arc that Steven's character went through. And so I love it when you have these sort of moments that don't feel like that wasn't my moment. That was the table's moment. It was everybody. That session would not have happened the same way, even close. Certainly true for your Fiasco game, Stephen. If some of those people weren't there, it wasn't like a boilerplate experience that was just, if we ran that back the same way, we'd get the same experience. No, very different.
Not like fast food service. Even if you play in an organized play campaign, it's not like fast food service where it's always going to be the same. If you have the right players, you can get some wacky stuff that like no one has ever seen before and probably no one will do again. Like, just to give a couple quick examples, organized play tables. So that means they have to follow very specific rules on very specific adventures. But there was one that we played where we were being asked in Pathfinder First Edition to find an archaeologist who we had met in a previous adventure, and we got a letter from her. So one of the people was like, "Oh, great! Well, I've met her before. I've got a letter from her, so I'll scry on her. We know what the site that she's at. We know where it's located, like geographically. So now I'll be able to see what the what spot she's in." And then that we had a cleric who could scry and I think the scrying was lower level for clerics back then than for wizards, and the wizard who could cast teleport. And so the cleric scried, the wizard teleported. That was the final room. And we fought the boss that was in there, and all these other miners and other excavators were there that were like level 1. And we were much higher level than that. But the problem is we didn't defeat any of the rest that we were supposed to fight on the way in. So we had to escort them out. One of the encounters was just like 32 Morlocks. That was just like the worst encounter that I've ever seen normally, because our characters could fight 320 Morlocks and not be threatened by it. We could fireball and all the Morlocks would be dead. But since we had these 16 miners that we were bringing backwards through, we couldn't fireball or we would kill the miners, and the Morlocks were threatening the miners, and it was suddenly an amazing encounter. And Linda just reacted to that on a dime. She was like, okay, bathroom break for 5 minutes because you're doing this backwards. And then when people were back, she just ran it. And that was, nobody's ever going to do that again. Or another one, there was a bid that was going on, and one group was like, this person likes the planes, so I'm going to summon an angel to impress them. And it turned out that guy was like secretly like an evil daemon worshiper in the lore of the setting. And the angel was very, very hidden, and it was almost impossible to tell. But the angel had an ability that automatically detected that and then wound up killing him. It was in a role-playing... the angel killed him, and it was in a role-playing section.
Yeah.
They had to like pay tons of money to get the summons for the angel because it was way above their level as well. That's Nobody else is ever going to do either of those two things. Not
quite the same way.
Even in organized play, which you would think is the more similar to the...
would generate more similar outcomes. But but I argue that is why I play TTRPGs.
Yeah.
I play TTRPGs because I don't want to have the canned experience. Right, I don't want to go like, oh, I went through that encounter. Oh, we went through that encounter too. Oh, I killed that boss. Oh, we killed that boss too. And then we went to the other place. Oh, we went to the same place.
People bond over
I know, right? I get it. Yes, I fully respect
remember
that.
where you were when you played Expedition to the Barrier Peaks?
Right. When people talk about video games and they're like, they're both sharing their mutual experience of basically going through the exact same game. And for me, that's not very compelling. I would much rather you tell me about what happened in your cool SimCity game, and I'll tell you what happened in my cool SimCity game, because both of those were very unique experiences, and that's what I really appreciate.
All right, gotta go.
All right, yeah, go play pickleball. Go
I know. I'm about to get yelled at. I can hear people outside my door yelling at me. So
we'll be tomorrow, Thursday, Knights of Last Call. We're going to be covering the history of the monk, and then we're going to talk about the monk in Pathfinder 2nd Edition and how cool it is.
My favorite class.
So it is in the running for my favorite class in Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
I feel like it's, to me, very clearly the best incarnation of a D&D style monk that has ever been done.
Yes,
I say that, and you know what? Logan is the one who did the first pass on it. I did do some work on it. Some of the things that are in it are from mine, so maybe I'm biased. But even just from the part that was entirely done by Logan before anyone else saw it, I still think...
Yeah, it's
like,
a very cool
it delivers on an almost impossible to deliver fantasy that the monk class demands.
You can have Mark on tomorrow, and then he can give you the whole history of the monk. Oh, if Mark's
I don't want to
busy.
speak for Mark, but but if you are interested in the monk, check us out tomorrow, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, Nice last call.
Yes, and I will leave everyone.
I mean,
with...
Steven can speak for me if he wants me to
That's
do
true.
things because I am contracted to him. So
yeah, that's true. But Dave the Diver, if you guys are looking for a new video game that just came out today, that I give you as an A++ game, and it is in the theme of Indigo Isles because you literally play a diver who dives to get fish for a sushi shop that he also runs on a tropical island. Look at it on Steam. It has like a 98% overwhelmingly positive.
What is that other game that's like that where you go into? There's a lot where you go into dungeons to run a.
There's like Racketeer. There's a couple of those.
Racketeer is that one's from Japan. That was
there's a
and
few.
then there's another one too, Moonlighter, I think.
Moonlighter. There's like a potion.
Those are the two I was thinking
there's like
of.
a potion maker one. There's a couple like that, but this one has that, and it has like dating sims, and it has like 50 mini games. It is insane, and it's like it just came out today. It's $18. Dave the Diver. I promise you. Oh, all right. I gotta go. I just got called.
Enjoy.